Hello, everyone. Josh Turner, Paranormal Roundtable. We have a show tonight. Hope everyone had a good Thanksgiving. Josh Turner at prtpodcast.com. Josh Turner at prtpodcast.com. We have some stories and we have a guest. So we are going to get the show started. Are y'all ready? We're going to talk about Dogman, Gugwe, cryptids, and ghosts.
Okay, everybody. That was one of my little nephews. That was Cristiano. Let me adjust my chair. Everybody thought I'd shrunk. Kind of like, oh, that Amish curse finally hit.
Yeah, that old Amish shrinking curse.
Yeah, the gypsy curve.
Yeah.
The one with he makes him thinner. I need that one to work for me. I was thinking, what's so bad about that?
Yeah.
You can just eat whatever you want. He's like, I'm getting skinny. Like, okay, dude, go ahead and flaunt your curse onto to us, dude. Everybody after Thanksgiving could use that one. The gypsy curse of getting thinner. I said that was kind of ridiculous. It's like, that's the curse? Be able to eat what you want? What's up, Tony? So everybody, yeah, like Cristiano said, Josh Turner, prtpodcast.com. Josh Turner, prtpodcast.com. We got stories. We got a guest, an amazing guest tonight. Is a friend of mine. I'm an admirer of his work and have been for a long time. So it's gonna be a pretty cool show. I can guarantee you that, dude. So here's the deal. We are a little backed up, so if you won something last week, it's still going to be shipped out. We just have to get to it because I had to do Black Friday. I am not a Black Friday person. I don't participate in the festivities of running around like a fool on Friday. But we had some things we had to take care of, and today being the first time that we're going to do the Friday show with the live stream. It's typically we do a Tuesday show. Now we decided to make the move to a Friday show instead of a Tuesday show. Now, reason being, I was talking to some friends of mine, Barton and me in particular, because he watches the show, and he said, "Man, I gotta leave, like 30 minutes to an hour before you guys finish because I gotta go to work in the morning." He's got a business. He's a painter, and so I said, "Okay, you're right." Few of the people started hitting me up and saying, "Hey, it sucks I can't ever finish the show." So we decided to make the decision to jump to Fridays because Friday night we can actually go later and people don't have to get up in the morning. And so the reason we're here the day after Thanksgiving, because I saw these people saying, we're not going to have a show this weekend so people can be with their families. Two things. First of all, not everybody wants to be around their family that long. Second of all, they're not doing their shows, so I'm doing my show. And no knock on any of you guys. Some of you guys are my friends, whatever. But the Friday after Thanksgiving, it's kind of like that week after Christmas. It's like, what's going on here? What are we doing? Nothing is happening. You're just kind of waiting for the next whatever. And
from Thanksgiving, everybody's recovering.
Everybody's recovering from the turkey tryptophan coma. And so it's kind of like one of those things where there's not a lot going on Friday after Thanksgiving. So I figured why, you're just sitting around the house doing nothing, playing dominoes with your cousins or whatever the heck you're doing. I figured why not just do the show. If we would have switched it to Fridays and then we started next week and we didn't do a Friday show this week because we did one on Tuesday, you would have had to wait like 9 days. Isn't that correct? 9 days? So I was like, why do that? 9 or 10 days, whatever. So I figured, why don't we just do the Tuesday show and then the Friday show, and then next week we'll just do the Friday show. So you won't have to wait like a week and a half to get Paranormal Roundtable. Right, Christian? That's a long time, isn't it, to wait for Paranormal Roundtable? Okay. So Cristiano is a big fan of the paranormal. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you've been bugging me to come up to the studio for a while. And
Yes, you have. Don't
yeah,
lie.
you have. Folks, that's our Gugwe. What's that thing called? Was it the thing we just showed on the camera there, Alec? What is
the
it?
transition.
A transition.
Yeah.
Werewolf?
Yeah. Well, that's not a werewolf. That's what we call the Gugwe, and what we talked about. And see now. Cristiano, I told you, I gave you some homework because we saw each other yesterday on Thanksgiving, and I said, hey, you got to be ready to talk about the Gugwe, and you came to me with some stuff about the black dog.
I think I got the wrong Gugwe.
Yeah, I think you
On
did.
the
I think you thought that it
channel.
was the BBC channel. Well, I guess they're big liar heads. I don't know. Nah, I'm just kidding. I think what it was is you got confused because somebody told you that about this black dog. And so he got a little confused, and I think you thought that the Gugwe was the black dog. Is that correct?
Well, no, that's how people describe
You got talking to the mic there, buddy.
Oh, that like
You gotta get right
in
up
the
on that microphone.
BBC channel. It goes like this guy said like he described how the Gugwe looked like. It looked like a black shaggy dog, like a black shaggy.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Not to be racist, but
Okay. A black shaggy dog. Describing something as
you
black
realize
is
that
not really racist, but
I'm just saying.
okay.
You know that a dog is not a human being, right, Cristiano?
Yeah.
Yes.
But Dogman, I think the confusion comes with kids is that Dogman, you know. Yeah.
Like, you know.
But that has nothing to do. It has nothing to do with race at all. Okay, so a
the
black
mouth of
shaggy
babes.
dog. Okay, Matia. Okay, she was my great aunt, and she used to talk about the cadejo. The cadejo is a black dog. It's a curse. It's something that's conjured up when someone is jealous, like as they say in Spanish, celosa or celoso, you know, and they put a curse on somebody, like say their husband or wife was cheating on them, and they would conjure up this black dog, and it would attack them. And of course, our aunt used to say that she used to chop cotton. Not to be racist, but she did. She chopped cotton. Okay, we were saying earlier, but she did. I mean, they were Mexicans, and her family had come over here. Her parents had come over here from Mexico, and she was my great aunt. So what happened was they had to make a living, you know. So they were working out in the cotton fields, and there was this guy. He was actually African American, and he was cheating on his wife. And so she went to a curandera, brujeria, whatever, and she asked her. I would say it's not really a curandera because she let this person put a curse on them. From what the story was, that she was actually not a bad witch. She was like a good witch, I guess. But she would allow somebody who had done bad things to be cursed. And so she told them, "Bring me his fingernails." And his clipped fingernails and his hair. And her name was Melinda. And so they did. And my aunt had nothing to do with this, but she was a young kid when this happened. She was like not even a teenager. And so she's passed on, but apparently this brujeria, she basically had taken this man's fingernails and his hair and used them in a curse, in a spell. And this black dog came out of the wood line, the tree line, while they were chopping cotton, and it ran out into the field, and because this guy had gone to get water. What it does is it typically catches you when you're alone. So when people see the attack, they're kind of at a distance. So when he went to get water, he was by himself. He was about 30, 40 yards from the nearest person. He went to the water truck to get water. And that's when they see the black dog come out, and it attacked him. And it started to rip him to shreds. By the time anybody got over there to try to chase it off, it had already bolted and was back running into the woods. You can never catch this thing. But the old timers attest that it's a real thing. On both sides of my family, I'm actually Caucasian and Latino, and on both sides of the family, they claim that this is a real thing. The black people where I come from, they call it the haint, just like they call the Dogman the haint, or they'll call the Bigfoot, they'll call them like hide behinds or different names like that. Some of the white people that I grew up with call them boogers. They hide out in the woods, whatever. The wolf type creatures, they would just call them werewolves. The Hispanic people would call them the hombre lobo. And of course, like I said, the black people call them the haints. Haints is a catch-all, for any kind of big cryptid type creature.
It's like a general term, yeah.
Yeah, it's causing mischief. So this thing attacked this guy. Well, what it looked like, he had torn him apart, but when they got up to him, guess what?
What?
He looked normal. What? There was nothing amiss. He had died of cardiac arrest. But the people that were there, she said there was about 40 people. They were out there working in this huge field, and she said that nearly all of them had a good angle and saw what happened, and he had been ripped apart. But when they got to him, he had just fallen over dead from a heart attack or a cardiac arrest. That's the story. Now, when you take that story as just one case, you would say, okay, that's ridiculous. This isn't, whatever. Thank you for that donation, Amy. Donations are not expected, but they are appreciated. And so you take it at one case, you're thinking, okay, this could be just a mass hallucination, people's vivid imagination. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But you get a lot of these. I'll tell you another one. I got it when it was in Detroit, and it happened to a guy that at the time he was homeless. And I know you remember this one, Anthony and Tony.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it was these hellhounds. He called them hellhounds. That was the words he actually used to us. And there were two of them, and they ran up these two stairways and went two staircases, and they got up to the top, and they pinned this guy down, and they began to rip him apart because he was being chased by a drug dealer he owed money to. When these other guys that were there, they were in a factory, a burned out factory. That area of Detroit looks like it's been bombed out, like after the war or something. It's like, but what happened was they tore this guy apart. But when they got to him, by the time somebody had called an ambulance, whatever,
He wasn't torn apart.
he wasn't torn apart. His heart had stopped once again. So that was a story that was given to me, and I know if my Thea was alive, she would have been like, see, I told you. The problem with my Thea, though, Thea Hova, bless her heart, I love her, but she would watch luchadors, wrestling.
Yeah.
You know what a
Lucha
luchador is, right? Lucha Libre?
I know Nacho Libre.
You know Nacho Libre?
Lucha Libre is Mexican wrestling. It's you know how you like to watch WWE?
Yeah.
Well, in Mexico they have wrestling too, but it's a lot cooler in Mexico.
They wear masks and they
Yeah,
do all kinds of crazy stuff,
I
man.
kind of knew that one. There's like 2 types of wrestling. Well, actually 3 types of wrestling, because sumo
yeah?
wrestling, Mexican wrestling, and American WWE or something.
There you go.
There's also Russian Samba wrestling, American freestyle, Roman Greco. Those are actually real fighting styles. So those are not like the soap opera type stuff. And not to knock pro wrestling. I got a couple of really good friends that are in pro wrestling, so I don't want to offend them, but it's not legit. But I mean, but it is entertaining. It's very entertaining. But my Thea, she used to watch it and think it was real. And she would yell at the TV. Okay? And there was this one character. It was like a novela. You know what a novela is? It's like a soap opera. Okay? And she would watch it religiously like she would watch these soap operas. And she would get on there and she'd be yelling at the TV screen and waving her shoe at them. And I would just be laughing because I'm a kid and I knew it was not real. And there was one guy that was like a priest. And he'd go out there and he'd tear his habit off or whatever they call it. What is it? The priest?
The robe.
The robe.
Yeah.
And then he would get up and, and then he would get hit by a chair or something and she would yell at the other guy and be like, "You're here, a priest. You're going to go to hell." and so, yeah, it was this whole drama that would play out on TV. And I'd just be like, okay, Thea, you know this isn't real. I'm like 8 years old telling her, you know. So forgive me if I didn't believe her when she would tell me these stories of the Manos Peludos and the you know, La Llorona, La Chuza, all these different things. And I just would sit there and listen to these crazy stories, and I'd be like, dude, why am I going to believe this? You know, now you're telling me about the Hombre Lobo. First time she ever told me about the Hombre Lobo, which is essentially in English translates to Wolfman. We were watching on her big black and white TV set. They had a big old black and white TV set. One of those, it was sat on the floor, you know, and it was just this big. And I was there. I was with your mother, Anthony, and we were little, and Coco and everybody, we were all there, you know, and Ralph and me, and we were there, my sister Priscilla. We were watching the TV, and I remember it was Lon Chaney Wolfman. So then my tia says, that's real. And she tried to change the channel because she said she didn't want us watching it because this is when she lived in Temple, Texas, because she said, we can't have this on the TV because it'll come if you talk about it.
Yeah, if you watch it,
if you watch it, it'll you know. I'm like 6 or 7 years old, and I'm like, what is this woman talking about? And then if you remember Lon Chaney, the Universal monster, he looked like he was wearing part of a Davy Crockett, you know, coonskin hat on his head, and he, and you know, it's like it was so goofy, and that's my idea of what a werewolf was when I was little, because I didn't know what a werewolf was. And I'm like, what is this? This is goofy. You know, it's not something that's scary, you know. And I was like, I made some kind of joke. I was like, if I ever saw this thing, I'd kick him in the nards, you know, because, you know, that's how I was like, I was a little kid. I thought I was tough, you know. And if anybody's ever seen Monster Squad, you know, they talk about the Wolfman, you know. That wasn't what I thought the werewolf looked like. And then when she would talk about this, the Hombre Lobo, and I told my mother, I said, what is this? My mom said, she's like, it's a real thing. And I'm like, a real thing? And she goes, yeah, it's a real thing. She goes, but what did Thea tell you? And when I told her what she said, well, of course, my mom tried to dispel my fear because we were living out in Northwest Texas at that time, and we would just come down to visit, you know, for the holidays. And she said, it's not over here. Well, unbeknownst to me, I lived in Haskell, Texas, where there is a creature known as the Haskell Rascal, which by some accounts, according to a couple of my peers, they claim that it looks cat-like. Well, the stories that I got from that area, I think it's a Dogman. Now, there could be two things going on there. There could be this black cat-like creature out there, a feline-looking creature, but there could be a Dogman-looking creature too. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people have seen this thing. Now, here's the crazy thing. This Dogman that I saw when I was 15, if that's what you want to call it, just looked like a quintessential werewolf, like from the movie Howling or whatever. Mm-hmm. Now, folks, Cristiano, his dad Pepe, is very irresponsible, and he allows Cristiano to watch horror movies and get him scared. But you don't. It doesn't bother you.
It doesn't.
It doesn't bother you at all. And the first time I talked to you about it, what did you tell me? Do you remember what you told me?
I love scary movies.
Yeah, you told me you love scary movies.
You've never watched a movie that scared you?
Well, only like the Blair Witch. It's like the Blair Witch though. Like the Blair Witch is really scary.
You really think that's scary? That's scary to you?
It's just like.
What about the scene where the girl has a snot bubble coming out of her nose? Is that part scary?
I don't know that, but I've seen like this scene where like something comes out of this girl's foot, and then like.
I don't remember that part.
That's not in the Blair Witch. That's something else.
You sure that's not Guardians of the Galaxy? No, that's Groot.
I think it means like not the Blair Witch Project, like the Blair Witch.
Are you talking about Blair? From the projects. That's what you're talking about. The hood. The Blair Witch. the Blair Witch hood.
I think I got
Jenny from the Block
with a different movie.
I think so, because Blair Witch, all I remember is, and I'll do a demonstration here. This is all I remember is I'm so scared. That's all I remember about the whole movie. And that's the part that woke me up. I was like, whoa, what's going on? You know. Now, my friend Barton's, his buddy actually made that movie. And so you know, he's like, yeah, he's my friend. The guy's my friend, whatever. And I was like, well, can you smack him for me? Because it was a waste of my money. I want my money back. And if I see him, I'm going to have to get my money back from the guy because it was terrible. I fell asleep. It was not entertaining at all. It was probably in the top 10 of the worst horror movies I've ever seen. And I've seen some pretty bad ones. I've seen Kingdom of the Spiders.
You remember
And-
Neo Wolf? That horrible, like, low budget.
Oh,
werewolf movie
yes,
that
I remember that.
you and Seth watched.
What is the problem? They cannot make a good werewolf movie.
I don't know. Dark Soldiers was the last good one.
You know, but then Barton says he didn't like Dark Soldiers. I'm like, come on, dude. I mean,
That's a cool.
now the way that their bodies weren't, the hair wasn't all on there, that I thought was weird until I got a Gugwe story out of Yellowstone, and this was given to me by Josh D'Annunzio from What Lurks Beneath. He says, you have carte blanche, go ahead and talk about any of the stories on his show, whatever. So I watched the one about Yellowstone. Did you watch that one, Tony? You must scoot in over here so you can get in.
I haven't. I've never watched Yellowstone in my life.
Well, no, Yellowstone. It's a show. What we were watching was a show called What Lurks Beneath, and he's got a good podcast. Not podcast. YouTube channel.
Oh.
So what to me that when they started talking about these bear-like creatures, I was wondering, like, you know, what these could be. Like, what could this possibly be? Because these things, they look like a cross between a bear, a wolf, a man, and a gorilla. That's the only thing I can think of. And now, Tony, do you have a mic? That's okay. Well, you can use Cristiano's mic.
Yeah, we probably should.
Yeah, y'all
Yeah,
can
I
share
it.
because we didn't set it up. We have enough. We just didn't do it. Okay, so anyway, Tony, what did you learn about these creatures?
Well, there's a lot of stories to go through. So which ones are you specifically talking about? It's about an hour-long show, and he goes over there's a lot of things that go on in Yellowstone, apparently, from disappearances to.
Okay, we're not talking about that. We're talking about these bear-looking creatures. Did you see that part?
I think I know what part you're talking about. What exactly happened? So I can.
Okay. Anyways, folks, pan back to me, and once again, I am failed. You have failed me for the last
just go
time.
over the story
You know
so
that
we can figure
line,
out which
Cristiano?
story
Shut
you're
up. Do you know that line? You have failed me for the last time. Do you know who says that? Darth Vader. I wish I could say that and make it true, but unfortunately, my fate is tied together with this goofball over here. So I can't necessarily say that, but I would love to say that and then push a button, and then Tony could go down and shoot where the alligators are, and they munch him down. But we don't have that. So we're just kind of
Gotta get some Dr. Evil chairs in here from Austin.
we need
Powers.
sharks with freaking laser beams to
Yeah.
deal with this guy. Okay, so what happened on that? Because I thought Tony was actually going to watch it and for once listen to what I asked him to do. I guess that's not going to happen. Here you go, folks. What on that show? If you go and you watch it, you will see what happened. There were people who were running into these creatures, and one of these guys was actually taken hostage by these creatures. And he was held in a cave. That is what was told to him by park rangers. Now, let me tell you something, dude. Before you start shaking your head and thinking that sounds crazy, I'll give you some food for thought. There are stories of these creatures actually doing just that. And I'm talking about not only that, but there was a girl. This happened up in Yosemite. And I don't know if this story is true or not. This story was given to me secondhand. But it was of a girl. She said she was 17 years old. She was hiking with her dad, and her dad were basically met on the road by these two creatures. Their arms were smooth, like human arms. They had a head that looked like a bear, and then they had like straight legs like a man, but they were furry. And the midsection was kind of almost looked like it was like it couldn't grow hair or something. It was very weird looking creatures. And she thought these things, guys, are cosplaying. They're wearing suits or something. You know, it's just 10 years ago. Okay. So she tells us this story, this incredible story. That, like I said, is a friend of mine that told me, and all I did was get an email correspondence from her. But I can tell you right now, let's see my notes right here. This, like I said, was 10 years ago. It was 2012 when this happened. And as incredible as it sounds, her and her dad were taken on the trail that they were walking on. There was another one that came behind them. So there were three of them all together and basically pointed to a trail, and they had to follow it up a hill. And then they ended up going into what was like a little cave, a little hole inside the wall, like an embankment. And they went into it. And they took them to a little room, and they basically just sat them there. And they had a language. They talked to one another in grunts and growls, and kind of like a weird like a language, you know. But it wasn't anything we could understand, and they were just there. And then one of them was much bigger and taller and stronger looking than the others, and he came out from the back of this sort of cave looking opening, because it wasn't really a cave. It was kind of just like a hole dug into the side of the ground, the way that they described it, but it was really deep. And this creature came out, and it told them through their mind, not with its mouth, basically that you're going to be here until we let you go. And it offered them food. They declined. And I'll tell you why. Because the food that they were being offered looked like it may have belonged to a person, like it was somebody. So that is the story that was told. Then one of them waved its hand or whatever, pawed looking hand over their faces, and they fell into a deep sleep. When they woke up, they were back on the trail. Minus her dad's fingers, which is pretty weird. So they don't know how that happened. He still has no recollection of it, but obviously they were bitten off because of the way that they looked. When he went to the doctor, that doctor said that it looked like a canine had bitten his fingers off. It was just pinky with these two right here, pinky and the ring finger on the left hand. It's a very weird story. And the guy that gave me that story, like I said, he got me in touch with this person who I never got to talk to. I just corresponded with her through email. So it is a very, it's just a strange thing. I don't know how to describe that, what that could be. But people make jokes about it, you know, man, bear, pig, whatever.
Yeah.
They're not described as pig-like at all. They're described as bear-like. Most of the descriptions I got, Gugwe-like. It's like bear mixed with wolf, kind of like wolfish, or like some sort of gorilla. You know, here's the thing: if you go back and you were to watch Josh Inokio's episode where he talks about the park ranger's story on Yellowstone, what's really crazy about that is when he talks about these bear-like creatures, these military guys came in, and they think that they may have been there to stop these creatures from doing whatever it was that they were doing, or to collect them, round them up, or whatever it is.
Wasn't this after they already were in there? And then basically one of them was kind of captured by one and was being held. And then he was knocked out. And then a female shot up in the air. And then that he was released. And when he came to, he was told that he was being held by one of these creatures and was being dragged to like a cave or something.
Yeah, I think that's one. Yeah, that's one of the stories.
Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing is that after that all happened, when the military came in and took care of them, whatever, the attacks and killings ceased temporarily, but then it started back up again, and there were these other creatures that were there that looked different than these ones that were being described. They did not look exactly like these bear-looking creatures with the furless arms. They looked like rangy werewolves. So those stories of these bear-like werebear creatures or whatever disappeared, and then these werewolf-looking creatures started popping up along with Bigfoot-type creatures. Okay, so we're going to stop right there for a minute. Let me ask you this. What would cause something like that to happen? Like, you're getting these reports of these. Now, I think one of them even had like a bluish tattoo on its arm or something. You're getting these reports in these national parks, state parks, whatever. Because I got another weird one out of the Daniel Boone National Forest. When you start looking at these cases individually, you're going, this is weird. This isn't, it seems like a one-time thing, and maybe it's just some sort of weird fever dream that somebody had. But that's not the case. What you're getting is a bunch of these stories in clusters and in one particular time frame. And one of the things that I read about, in particular with the Yellowstone case, it really makes me think that these things were pulled out or extracted, and that another species was inserted. because after these bear-looking creatures came these wolf-looking creatures, and then these Bigfoot-looking creatures.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be the first time that like a government agency put like certain species in an area to which it's not native, or just to be able to track it and see how it affects the ecosystem. I mean, that's how Lyme disease is so prevalent in ticks now, because they actually they took infected ticks and spread them into like rural areas so they could study how it spread.
That's right.
And if,
And now it's
yeah,
everybody's got
if
it.
they'll do it with ticks, they'll do it with any creature that they want to study, natural or supernatural, cryptid, or otherwise. I mean, why not?
Yeah. Yep. I got an idea. Whenever you pan over to them, we can take the chat box off temporarily so you can see Tony and everybody else. So, folks, if the chat box disappears temporarily, it'll be back. Don't worry. Here's the thing. Here's the rub. Okay. I think, and I want your opinion at home in the chat. Y'all can tell me, and then Tony and Cristiano and Anthony, you can give me whatever you want to give me. It is weird to me that a lot of people believe that what's going on in the LBL is coming out of Fort Campbell. And I'm not talking about one or two researchers. I'm talking like there's a consensus that like that is really where it's coming from. And so I'm not going to sit up here and say, okay, everything that happens, over in this area is coming from Fort Sill, and everything over here is coming from Fort Bliss, and over here it's coming from, Fort Bragg, and over here it's coming from, Camp Lejeune, and you can't say that. Edwards Air Force Base gets all kinds of weird stories. We get stories out of 29 Palms. A lot of our military friends have told us a lot of weird things. I've been on a few of these bases, and I've seen some weird things. Not cryptids and ghosts or anything like that, but just people behaving weird. Let's put it that way, especially Fort Hood. But I can tell you, there are things going on. And when you talk about Fort Hood, let's focus on that one for a second. When you drive from Austin to Fort Hood, that drive, first of all, it's boring and long, but it's pitch black out there. Like when you get to a certain point, if it's at nighttime, there are no lights anywhere, and I mean nothing. There's no lights on the road that keep you. Hold on one second. There are no lights on the road that keeps you like you know what I mean. Like if you were to be out there and you got a flat tire or something, you're just at the mercy of whoever or whatever's out there. And I have heard stories from people, because we used to have a guy that was a co-host of ours, Armando Salazar, and he had some friends who they talked about some weird stuff, going out and doing maneuvers and stuff and hearing weird howls, weird noises, just weird things, dude. Nothing we could really pinpoint on the show and say, hey, this was such and such, but just a lot of weird stuff that went on. And one of them had told a story about being stranded one time and having something tap on the glass of his truck, or I think it was an SUV. And he woke up, and then he looks, and he didn't see anything, but he saw some sort of black, shadowy looking thing going off the side of the road. I mean, it's not enough to sit there and say definitively, hey, I saw a Bigfoot. It attacked that's not what happened. But you get enough of these stories that happen in and around these military bases that you wonder what it is, like where it's coming from. And to me, it's not a coincidence that it's happening in the state national parks. Like recently, now somebody said in the chat that they found a foot in Yellowstone. That's true. They recently found a foot. But every time something happens, and then they found a guy who had been basically melted in one of the shafts there.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, and they always have it's always like, oh, no foul play suspected, ever. There's never, all this stuff that happens in these national parks and around these military bases, and they always say the same thing. Oh, there's no foul play involved. Person was found half-eaten, What about the weird Tyrannosaurus Rex looking prints that were next to him? Oh, I don't know what you're talking about. Ha, those are ostriches. So did an ostrich kill these people? Absolutely not. Ostriches are vegetarians. Really? Well, it looked like no more questions, and then that's it. You never, and they give up. It's I recently kind of got into it with a friend of mine who is a friend of the show, but it seems like his mission is to debunk every time somebody's attacked by one of these things. And finally, I just said to him, I said, look, man, every time something happens, you sound like the media. You have some sort of explanation. And I'm like, darn it, you can't do that because there's not always an explanation for this stuff. There just isn't. I mean, you got people seeing these Gugwe-looking creatures and getting their fingers bit off, and then people that are being going missing. It happens quite a bit. And these national parks, state parks, they're not being completely honest, I think, about a lot of these. They're not keeping track and records. You got people on the LBL, park rangers, talking about seeing creatures dragging people out of their tents and doing all kinds of crazy things. So you start to wonder, like, where is this all coming from? I mean, where there's smoke, there's fire. I really believe that there is something going on in these national parks and these state parks and around these military bases. And I don't, and people may say I'm crazy, and I really don't give a crap. I have a show about the paranormal. How much crazier are you going to get?
Yeah.
I mean, oh, he's crazy. Well, yeah, you just noticed. But the thing is, these things are coming from somewhere. It's no coincidence that people see things on that road to Fort Hood all the time, in and around Killeen, because it's the largest military base in North America, and then around these other bases. You get these weird stories. Fort Edwards, Edwards Air Force Base. You get all these weird stories of Bigfoot. You get these white Bigfoot stories. 29 Palms. You get this weird wild man stories that looks like a hairy wild man, whatever, out in the middle of the night, whatever, in the desert. You get all these weird stories, and eventually you have to say, hey, there's something going on. Yeah. And so I'm going to tell you right now, I am a big believer, like I said, in where there's smoke, there's fire, and I believe that there is something to this, absolutely. One of the Gugwe stories, and I say Gugwe, I'm not saying that it absolutely was a Gugwe, but this one happened in Kentucky. It was in the northern part of Kentucky, and I want to say it was near. It might have been in southern Illinois, but it was. Somebody gave me one recently, and I did not even get a chance. I read over it briefly, and I actually was reading it right before I left earlier today. And it was Gugwe-like, and it was something that somebody had seen out of the window of the back of a camper when they were young. They were like a kid. Thank you, Mark Fitzgerald. He's a good friend of mine there. Thank you for that donation. They were looking, they were camping, they were sleeping, and they were like, I think they were out like on the side of the road near the woods, and I think it was on the border is where it was at. But I can't remember if they said it was Illinois, Kentucky, or they were from Illinois and it happened in Kentucky. Anyway, they hear this like scratching on the side of the truck, and this little dude, he wakes up, and I think he said he was like 10 or 11 years old, and he looks and he's staring at the red eyes of a creature, and he could see its breath coming and onto
fogging up the window.
Fogging up the window, yeah. And they had the like a little window in the back. It was a camper, and he said, I think they said it was 1992 or 91, something like that. And he remembers being with his dad, and he was terrified. And he said he was looking at this thing, and when it turned to the side, it made a noise like roar, and he said it sounded like a bear. And he said he looked down and he saw it when it got down on all fours, and then it stood up, and when it walked, he said it looked gorilla-like, but it had the head of a bear. And I asked him, I said, did it look like a werewolf? He said, no, it did not look werewolf-like, right? So I messaged the guy and I said, are you sure? Guy says, I'm absolutely positive. And there's like bear-like, absolutely. So I'm telling the story. And I've only read it over once, and then I typed back and I said, look, is there anything else you can tell me? He says, no, it just looked like a bear on kind of like on a gorilla's body.
Yeah.
But with human-like legs that were just gigantic tree trunk type legs. Like he said, the legs looked like a bodybuilder's. And he said it had to have been a full moon because I'm saying it was a full moon because he said he could see it pretty clearly. And he said that he was terrified. He said he didn't sleep. It was 3:30 in the morning. He didn't sleep the rest of until daybreak. And then he was falling asleep in the truck, and he says his dad was a very no-nonsense kind of guy, got onto him for being dog-tired and just kept getting onto him. And he told him, he said, man, I saw something last night. And then his dad made a comment to the effect of, I knew we shouldn't have parked there. So it was kind of like maybe he knew something. And so years later, he said it was years later, and he was playing football. He was in high school, and they were right. I think this is or baseball or football, whatever. He said he was a ball player, and they were going home from the game, and his dad and him were talking. And he said, Dad, he just brought it up out of the blue. He said, Dad, you remember when I was a kid and we pulled off on the side of the road in Kentucky, and we saw that weird bear-like thing that I saw, whatever. And his dad says, yeah. And he says, had you seen it before? Did you know about it? And his dad never answered him. And he didn't want to anger his dad, so he just didn't ask again. So he thinks that, his dad had seen it at one point in that area, and maybe there was something to it. That happens. Especially with the older generation, they don't want to talk about this stuff. It's not like our generation, and then y'all's generation, where it's like, hey, I want to hear about this. I want to know about this, because the people in the older generation, you didn't go around talking about this stuff because you were labeled crazy and they threw you in a nut house.
Yeah, like some people would show up in a white van and toss you in the back of it. Yeah.
Yeah, some people might think you're like a psycho or like mentally insane or like probably on something. Like,
yeah, you're right,
it's like,
Cristiano.
like.
Well, do you go to school and talk about this kind of stuff at school?
No.
Why not?
You don't tell your friends?
I do. Just my school says, "Oh, we don't allow violence and blah 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 and scary stuff." Like
they don't. Well, they don't. I mean, we don't get to talk about violence. I mean, you don't go talk about
But like that one part where like the person's
finger was, yeah. Oh, so if you talk about that in school, you'd be in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have friends who go camping?
I don't know.
You know what you should do? You should talk to your teacher, tell her about my show, tell her to watch it. Okay, and then I'll come to your school and I will scare the crap out of all of your classmates, including your teacher. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay.
All right. And then we'll put a dead bird on her desk and let her know to give you straight A's the rest of the...
And
okay.
if any of your friends are talking about going camping, you can tell them these stories and scare the crap out of them.
Tell them, you really want to go camping? Is that what you want to do? Yeah? Is that your final answer?
You can tell them what's out there and what's going to happen to them.
We'll give them the story of Juan Arturo Mata at Pedernales
his
State
story
Park.
was one of my favorite.
Yeah, we'll talk about what happened to him. Let me tell you something.
This is a good one.
I'm not trying to make people scared of going outside. Like, oh, don't go outside because if you do, the boogeyman will get you. No, I'm just saying that if you do, the boogeyman will get you. I don't know what this significance is. I guess he has a patch on his eye. But the boogeyman, as we all know, okay, his real name is John. All right. Yeah, his name is John. You didn't know that?
I thought it was just like a myth or something.
No, the boogeyman's real name is John Smith.
John Smith. Yeah, it's the most common name in the United States.
Yeah, it's on his driver's license.
I'm confused.
Well, McLovin is his cousin. That's his buddy. He's friends with a guy named McLovin. That's his full name, just McLovin. McLovin is from Hawaii.
Yeah.
You didn't know John Smith?
No, I thought he was like I thought the boogeyman was like an entity.
No, John Smith, and then he's got a buddy named John Jacob Jingleheimer Smith.
So he's not.
And a brother named Smitty Werben Jagerman Jensen.
Yes, Smitty Werben.
He was number one.
He was number one. Smitty Werber Jagerman Jensen.
He was number one.
He was number one, right? You remember that?
I remember that SpongeBob.
Exactly.
But like,
who's SpongeBob? What is that? Is he a real guy?
No, he was a.
What if I told you this? What if I told you this? What if I told you that anytime, anything that you could think of with your imagination has already been done and it's already happened and it's all real? Because your imagination is a very powerful tool. That's why you got to keep your mind clean and don't think bad things, because you can think things into existence. Because you wouldn't be able to think about it if it wasn't already programmed into this matrix we're living in.
Did you know that everything around us started out as a thought?
Yeah.
Okay, like this microphone, right?
It was a thought.
Somebody had to invent it, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? What do you think the idea started?
A thought.
Right
I
here.
thought, yeah. So Smitty Werber Jagerman Jensen actually is the one that created that. He thought up the microphone because he was number one. He's already looking at us like, you don't believe me, do you?
What?
The telephone was invented because somebody got the idea that they wanted to talk to somebody who wasn't even there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it started as an idea. So the things that you think in your mind, you can manifest them in reality. So
Like
you have to
this.
be careful about what you think, about what you listen to, about who you listen to.
Like this, a phone.
Yeah, a phone, exactly.
It's also a matter of convenience / laziness. People are like, I want to go to Abilene, but it's a long wagon ride. Let me create a motorized vehicle that goes a lot faster than a horse, so I can get there quicker. You know, and not get. They got to ride a buckboard wagon and get splinters on their legs and their whatever, and so they're like, I don't want to do this. I want a motor vehicle to ride in, right? So that's why they invented it. Sheer laziness. And then they're like, I want to talk to my mom, but man, she lives 2 towns over, and I'm not getting on the horse to go do that. So then you could just call her and not have to.
Text her.
Or by,
There
or
you
by
go.
that point, drive over there. Nobody wanted to do that, so they just like, look, and that's how delivery started too. Like, you know how pizza delivery started. You know how it
They
started.
have to like walk, right? Or,
Exactly.
Like, horses.
Yeah, we had to go
and then,
get we had to go to Pizza Hut on our horses to get pizza back in the day. Back when I was a kid.
And then I remember like postmen. You know, the people that like gives you mail, like you know.
Who's
The
that?
mailman.
Never heard of that.
Mailman, the mailman.
Is that John Smith?
No, not John Smith, not the boogeyman. Like the mailman that gives you mail.
What about him?
Well, they used to like use airplanes and stuff.
Wow.
They have to walk millions of miles or
Millions of miles.
use horses.
That's exactly. That's crazy.
That's before.
The Pony Express. You talking about?
What?
The Pony Express. That's what it was called.
Oh,
Yeah. So if you wanted to get a pizza, like we used to have to actually get in a car and drive down there to go pick it up. It was a giant pain in the butt, and it actually stymied your obesity. So in order to accelerate obesity, besides dumping copious amounts of salt and sugar and fat into everything, they had to come up with a way that they could make you get fatter quicker and more efficiently, because they want us all to look like walruses. So, yeah, it's true.
Yep.
And so what they did was they said, we're going to create delivery, and we're going to make the most fattening food on earth available through delivery. And it's going to be the first and foremost food delivered. So it is disappointing. It's pizza.
Are you taking notes? We're gonna quiz you about this later. So
Yeah. And if you fail, you're going to have to meet John Smith.
where's John?
Yeah, we're gonna
Smith?
feed you
We
to
don't
the
know where
Gugwe.
John Smith could be anywhere. If you go in the mirror and you say John Smith, if you say his name 3 times, he pops up and he goes, "Hey!" Then he tries to sell you insurance premiums, and he just talks about it until you go, and then you fall asleep and you miss school the next day, and then you flunk.
The worst part is you can't hang up on him like on the phone.
I don't have school tomorrow.
Well, I'm saying you'll be asleep until school starts again, and you'll miss it, and then you'll flunk, and then all your friends will make fun of you because you're the dummy that didn't graduate.
And then you'll be in trouble. Your dad will be mad and take
Yeah.
away your Xbox or whatever it is you have.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm scared of him.
You're scared of your dad?
No, not that.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
you're not scared of your dad.
Of John Smith?
I thought John Smith was like an internet. I mean, like when you said the boogeyman, I thought you meant like an entity.
An entity, huh?
Yeah.
So,
Like
so what is El Cocuy? You know what the Cocuy is?
no, my grandma used to say like if you were bad, the kukui would get you.
Yeah,
but, like,
everybody's Abuelita
Yeah, the
said that.
Cocuy is gonna eat
what
you.
does it look like?
The Cocuy?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll tell you what it looks like. The Cocuy hides out in everybody's grandmother's closet, in the back of the closet. You know where your grandma has all her clothes in the back and the shoes and all that? Okay, if you can climb over that and get to that very back, there's a little door. It's about this big. All he can do is stick his head out the door and look around. Okay? But if you imagine him enough, he'll shrink. Once he shrinks down to a certain size, he can walk out. Then he can grow big again. And once he grows big, he's going to pop out wearing all your grandma's clothing and her jewelry and everything and be like, give me a kiss. But it's really a wolf snout, and it looks like a werewolf.
So big.
And then, you're going to be like, well, you have large eyes. He said, yes, so I can see you. And you're going to say, you have really big teeth. Yes, so I can eat you. And he's going to go, ah, and he's going to bite you. And that's it.
That's scary.
Exactly. So that is the kukui.
I always thought that.
But the kukui, you can tell the kukui from the boogeyman. You know how? Because his name is Juan Smith, not John Smith. And the kukui also talking like this, unless he's talking Spanish. Right? Yeah. Okay. He has an accent, and he says, hey, listen to me, Mr. Dogman. And then you're like, what are you talking about? You're the Dogman. No. I'm the boogeyman. It's two different things.
Te voy a comer, mocoso.
¿Qué pasa, boogeyman? ¿Qué pasa, Tosilia? And then he attacks you. That's it. Boom. It's over. So, all right. So that brings us to 9 o'clock. We're going to call our guest. We have a guest, and we're going to talk to him. He's a guy that I've been wanting to talk to for a while. We're hoping to do a project together. We're going to do some work, hopefully. The guy has had a show on Travel Channel. He's a really, really, really smart guy. Some of you may recognize his voice when he comes on, because he has been on his show. And we're going to call him right now. Are you ready?
Yes.
You ready to call him? All right.
I'm ready.
All right. So we're going to put these headphones on you so you can hear him when he talks, okay?
And can I talk to him? Or something?
Maybe. We'll see what happens.
Hello.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. All right. So, folks, this is Christopher Garitano. You want to say hello?
Hello, everybody. Yeah, I didn't expect to be on it in this way, but how's everything going? I don't know who's in the room, but good to be here.
Yeah. How's my sound? Is it
Sounds good.
okay? Because I got an echo in my headphones.
Yeah, it's just one of the things.
Okay.
Got to work
All
out,
right.
but-
So it's audio, but if you want to do video, we can do video. It's up to you, Chris.
I mean, is everybody on audio only? I can do audio as well. If you need me on video, I can go in my office and do it another method.
Oh, no.
But, right now, I'm on
Doesn't
the phone.
matter.
Okay.
We're perfectly fine just doing it like this.
Okay. Either way is fine.
Yeah. So, Chris, introduce yourself to the audience and tell them what you do.
Well, my name is Christopher Garitano, and lifelong movie maker since I was a little kid, and was completely immersed in ghost stories and stories of the paranormal through family folklore when I was a little kid, probably like everybody else in this room, and just became obsessed with it. And always loved movies and literature in regard to all the things we love and the paranormal. And around the age of 14, I had an experience, and it was very real, and convinced, for my entire life that there's something much more than what we see and perceive on a very normal day. And so I continued and went to film school, and later on ended up making a motion picture called Montauk Chronicles, which eventually caught the attention of some TV networks, and I made a few shows so far, and now I'm working on some new stuff and new movies and writing a lot, and it just seems to be my everyday existence since I was a kid.
Yeah, and the other night when we talked, we had a long talk, and we had been we'd been corresponding for a while, and then we didn't we weren't able to connect, but we finally did. And the interesting thing is we have a lot in common, and
For sure.
yeah, and we had a lot of I don't know how you say it. Similarities in our beliefs and our views, and one of the things that we talked about was H.P. Lovecraft, and we had talked about what our opinions were on certain subjects pertaining to his work, and you actually did a show called Strange World that I saw on the Travel Channel. And now, if I'm correct, you wrote, directed, and produced that yourself?
I did. I created Strange World. It was after I did something with the History Channel called The Dark Files that I co-executive produced and hosted. And Travel Discovery wanted to make a show with me, and there was some kind of concept on the table. And I said, "Well, I'm not really interested in that, but give me 2 months, and I'll show you what I want to do." And that was Strange World by name as well. I presented 30 episodes, 8 of which were granted for the first season, and 8 one-hour episodes were made for the first season.
Yeah. And one of the episodes in particular, well, they were all good. I mean, folks, if you haven't seen it, you have to go and check out Chris's work.
Yeah, you could pass that link around, because it's right now the license in the States belongs to the Hallmark Channel, but I took it upon myself to make it available on a YouTube channel. So you check it out anytime you want.
Yeah. And here's the link right here. Let me hand mine to see if you can put that up on the in the chat. So so I found it on YouTube, but I don't know if I found all 8 episodes. And
they should be on that playlist on that link.
Okay, all right. So you had covered some pretty interesting subjects. One in particular that hit home for me was the one you did in Austin. Now, because I live here, but one in particular, there was a house right there by the lake. And there was a guy, I'm not going to give the whole story away, but he took a mirror out of that house. Now, the interesting thing about that is that right there by those docks, there used to be a security, and he actually had an encounter with what I believe was a werewolf. And it was him and a pest control guy. And
Wow.
when the spring comes, they go out and they get on the boats and they clean off the pests because it's real bad. I know it's real bad for spiders because we've done security there. But I used to know the security guard that worked there, and he told a friend of mine that he had a story. And so I met with him and the pest control guy with my brother and a couple of our friends, and we all got together. And he told us this story of this creature swimming across the water. And when it got out of the water, it looked like either a Native American or a Hispanic guy with long hair. And it was like all his hair had fallen off other than his human hair. And it no longer looked like a wolf, and he walked into the woods, which is a crazy story. But it was really like a stone's throw from that house. And that house had sat there for a long time. And I knew, without even being told, that there was something really wrong with that house. I knew that it was a haunted house. It gives off that vibe. And when you were talking on the show, I knew automatically where that was. And I was like, oh, man. And so that was actually, I think, the first episode I saw, and I just caught it. It was on TV, and I thought, man, this guy is somebody I want to talk to. And you did such a great job, and you're so articulate and intelligent. And I thought, man, this guy's got somebody I got to talk to. And talking to you the other night was a real treat, and I really enjoyed our conversation. And then when we started getting into some of the topics, like how the Lovecraftian thing and all, and the dark matter and the darkness and what dwells there and what comes from it, and your opinions on it was pretty interesting. Now, you work on you're working on some projects right now. Can you tell us anything about those, or is it something you keep under
No,
wraps?
I
Or?
can talk about it. I had a few offers from networks after 20, well, just before COVID hit us all. I had a couple of new shows greenlit. I was excited about that, and then everything was kind of devastated for a year and a half. So I reevaluated just career-wise how to approach these things with more security. I didn't want to feel so vulnerable in case something like that happened again. So I created my podcast, and I started working on a new docuseries. I was going to call it Strange World, but there's so many people using that title now that I changed the title and just called it simply Off to the Witch Presents, which is the name of my podcast. But this is how I pitched Strange World originally. And my intention was always the journey. Never really is it, of course, information is important, research is important, great conversation, exploring a subject, but it was never, oh, wow, we're going to solve this very complicated, enigmatic puzzle. Because most of the time you're not going to, even though most of these shows promise that. I don't want to promise that because these things might not be solved ever or might take some time. So I think the journey of exploration is better. And I also wanted to look into culture and experiences and anything surrounding that, even the location. And that's how I pitched it to Travel Discovery originally. And now I'm making it exactly how I want to make it. The first in the series that I sent out a little sneak preview of that you can watch on my YouTube channel is called A Haunting We Will Go. I wanted to take an oversaturated subject and look at it in a way that either hasn't been looked at correctly, in my opinion, in a very long time, or in new perspectives. Now, what that is for so long, we've called, like my experience when I was 14, immediately I was like, well, that was a ghost. Well, what is a ghost? Why can't we question what that is? And there are scientists who have looked into what that is, like Michael Persinger, who I touched upon slightly in Strange World, but I wanted to go deeper. And it's so funny that you mentioned Josh Lovecraft, because I named that episode From Beyond. And I felt Persinger was like Dr. Pretorius, like he was looking into these things and using generators, which he actually created two devices. Well, there's one derivative I literally have in my garage right now, which is the God helmet. The other is the haunt box. What Persinger was doing was you would have a subject. They would go inside this freight elevator size box, and then your frontal lobe or different parts of your brain would be bombarded with electromagnetic energy. And what Persinger originally had said was that, well, I think perhaps a lot of experiences in regard to hauntings or UFO abductions might coincide with a large amount of geomagnetic or electromagnetic fields. So he was trying to simulate that and see what the results would be, and striking results. People were experiencing things. Mary Roach, who wrote a book called Spook about, life after death and hauntings and stuff like that, great book, went to Persinger's place while he was alive, went inside his haunt box and experienced something interesting audibly. But she asked him something curious, which I was curious about as well, because, these scientists have to get the grant money. They can't just blurt out saying, I'm trying to open doors into the unknown. But I think from what I've read, perhaps that was Persinger's quest. Maybe he thought he was opening doors of consciousness or doors into the unknown. And that's very Lovecraftian, just come to life. So.
And when we talked the other night, we talked about how Lovecraft always made it a point to say, oh, this is absolutely fiction and any bearing on anything real, it's just a coincidence, blah, blah, blah. But if you look at what he was writing and what he was writing about, there are stories going back to ancient Sumeria that are actually, that run parallel to his stories. And you and I, we went deep into the subject. I say deep, it's a deep subject, and we scratched the surface, but we went into it and we talked about the darkness, and for where it comes from, To me, his character of Cthulhu actually is the embodiment of the dark matter. I believe that that is the dark energy that actually created evil as we know it. But I think that it was the personification of it in his work, which was Cthulhu. It was like this, the old ones, the ancient ones or whatever. And there are even orders of people who are still to this day trying to conjure up the dark ones, the ancient ones, whatever, that goes beyond what I call like the demonic Nephilim here in this realm. I think it's something that comes from deep space. And we talked about that, and you were like, yeah, that's very kind of on the level of what you believed. And your take on it is very interesting, because a lot of the people that I talk to, now not all, but they're like, I'm looking for answers. I want to know. Where you're kind of like, it's a fresh take. It's just kind of like, we're not going to know. But the journey
Right.
to discovering that's the whole point. It's just
Well,
getting
even
there.
this discussion is opening up those channels for understanding, because it's almost like we have to reevaluate everything we thought we understood. For instance, what is imagination? What is what happens when we do imagine? What are dreams? Like, we feel like we know what these things are, but we really don't. Where do they come from? And so, for instance, let's say someone combines, these ideas of all these demons, and then they start dabbling in the black arts, okay? The dark, black magic. And we might have, okay, so these energies, these cosmic energies that we were talking about, we might have the ability, because they're so amorphous and malleable, that if you belief could be a catalyst. And I know this is starting to get really complicated. I hope it doesn't go off the rails. But in other words, imagine, if you will, your belief is so strong, just like faith, right? Your belief is so strong in the opposite, something darker, that these energies could take the shape of something that you're imagining that is dark, that you're the catalyst, you're the thing that helps manifest this thing into your reality. And I think that's very true. And if we look through all that literature, and if we look through, and this is why I've read and explored these subjects, I feel secure to do that. I don't dabble in that stuff at all. I am very safe. I don't practice any of that stuff. I'm interested because I want to understand it, but I don't, I wouldn't dare. I have no interest whatsoever into, I met a guy once. He said, because he dabbled in all this stuff, and he constantly practiced Aleister Crowley's stuff. And no offense to anybody out there that's doing that, but I personally feel like Crowley was quite a sadistic person, and he wasn't offering you anything good. And so this guy used it a lot. I said, tell me one benefit that you got from this. And he was like, well, I would conjure up demons. And I don't know how truthful he was being, but he was pretty intense about this stuff. And I said, so tell me one benefit that came from this. And he said, well, I met my wife. I said, you just got a divorce. Like, nothing good came from what he's talking about. So I'm trying to figure out, like, what benefit comes from this. Whatever it is, it's probably quite short-lived. And if you look at story, there's so many different stories throughout the ages that tell us, beware of this stuff. Well, there's a reason for that. There's a reason why all of this doesn't bring you greatness and hard work and keeping your head straight and understanding and doing the right thing always does. I think there's a huge truth to that. On a basic level, we understand that, but a lot of it, at the end of the day, coming full circle to the point of me saying this, is that we have influence over these energies, and we might even be doing ourselves great harm by following in some path that we don't understand. And that warning's been given in story for so long. So,
as somebody that we talked about this, and you had said that you were working security, and that you
yes.
were, and it's funny because we have that in common too. And you said you were doing work in a monastery, and you had gone into the monastery, and one of the most intellectually stimulating conversations you ever had was with an 80-year-old monk.
Yes.
And I believe he was Catholic monk, right?
Yes, he was.
Yeah, and you said that you felt such a calm peace, and you touched upon the energy having a lot of influence over our moods, and how we approach life and the world, and then we kind of got into, like, after that I started talking about the archons and how they in the apocalypse of James, like where Jesus tells his brother James to flee Jerusalem because it's full of archons. I believe that part of the mission of these archons, this is just my belief, is to influence our imaginations to open these doorways. But I think that it's a control that ultimately they have to use a form of trickery to circumvent the rules, and the rules are really made by, are given to us by God, and it's our choice to open that door and let your imagination run wild with whatever these things, and I think that one of the things that made that monk so at peace, and the energy was purified in that place. And I think that the archons had no place there, so that they couldn't disrupt your energy or your chi, and so I think that there's a big, like, they look for holes in people, to attach themselves to. And if you don't give them that, then they don't have that ability. And I do believe that just energy, darkness in and of itself can create and become personified. But they need like a catalyst. It's parasitic. It needs something to feed it. And I think
For
that's
sure.
a big, yeah. And so we talked about that. Tell me about this conversation you had.
Well, I'd heard many stories that were similar, and I'm sure, like, you read the headlines, and there's someone in a family that just loses it and kills someone
Mm-hmm.
else, and it's like, I knew these people. I never expected that to happen, and this horrible tragedy happens. I've always wondered what inspires these things. Sometimes people are very private about their conflicts in life, so that could just be the most simplistic explanation for it. But I've read a lot of stories about people moving into a new home, and their relationships were just fine, and they had never fought before, but since their entrance and, into this new domain, they were having nothing but conflict, hateful conflict. And it could be that you enter a place and you're absorbed by an energy, almost like a parasitic energy that feeds off of these things, that gets
Mm-hmm.
inspired to even, that inspires you to do even worse, to fight, to argue, to be at each other's throats all the time. And I don't know, I mean, it's as simple as walking into a location and saying, wow, I was fine 5 minutes ago, and now I have a really bad feeling. I think we should look into those things more so than simply trying to get a reading off of one of the many popular devices today in regard to ghost hunting. I think it's more important to walk into a place and trust the devices that are already built into your physiology. And I said these things on Strange World. However, it's like, you're wrestling with a network. They're like, wow, man, this is a little highbrow, in regard to our other programming. It's like, yeah, don't you want that? Don't you want to give it a shot, So I would say 75% of Strange World was what I wanted it to be, maybe a little bit less. But now I'm working on these things, and I have 100% control. And I'd like to, again, my goal is not to bore you. I want to entertain you because that's important. But at the same time, entertaining doesn't mean stupid, and it doesn't mean me being disingenuous. So those are the things I
Mm-hmm.
really do.
And I think that when I watched Strange World, and I watched every episode, one of them I watched twice, the one about the video games, because I
Yeah,
tried to
and I
force
just
my
covered
nephews
that
to
on
watch
my
it.
on my podcast as well. The latest
Yeah.
episode was kind of a follow-up to that.
Mm-hmm. The reason I watched it twice because I forced my nephews to watch it to try to show them that video games are, bad and out to get them, but it didn't work. But anyway, just but
Hey, that's
it was
Tony with the addiction.
that's Tony's addiction, yeah. But the thing is, what gets me about movies, video games, whatever, they can put all this really deep thought into it, and make it borderline satanic. But then when you try to go a little deeper on a docuseries, and then they're like, "Oh no, that's a little highbrow." It's like, come on, dude. I mean, so reality has to be watered down, but ridiculous fiction can be elevated to the highest levels of insanity. That makes no sense at all.
I would, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, Josh. But what I was going to say was, while it was on the tip of my tongue, was that I would be lectured by some of my co-executives, some of them Emmy Award winners, which to me doesn't really mean much. Would say, "Listen, Christopher, the audience is stupid. That's our mantra." I said, "I'm sorry, I completely disagree with you. 100% disagree with you." So no, I don't
Yeah.
think the audience is stupid. I think they would enjoy. But see, here's the thing. This is where imagination comes into play. It's like, unless you can plug these people into your brain, no matter how you explain it, they're never going to see what you see until it's on the screen. And so that's why I elected myself to go and make this new series independently first, right? I might license it to a network. We'll see. But I'm making it on my own, so I have absolute full control over it because it's important. I don't know. These things are important to me, not just a paycheck. I need to
Yeah.
make money to do this.
Yeah, and the thing is, if and let me tell you something, folks. I'm gonna explain something to you. And one of the reasons why I respect Chris and I really wanted to work with him and talk to him. Excuse me, I'm trying to get comfortable in my chair and it's like not working here. Is because I saw that when you were doing the show, you have a level of intellect and intelligence that you can approach this subject with, and I got the sense that you were being kind of held back because I could see that you had a lot more going on. And when I was watching, I think the second episode I had watched, I had said something to my wife, and I said, this guy needs to do a podcast. I said that, and I think the second episode was the video game one. And when I looked into who you were and what you had done, you had started out with the Montauk Project. Mm-hmm. And I had only seen bits and pieces and parts of it and had never gotten to sit down and watch the whole, your take on it. It was just like bits and pieces here and there. And I thought it was really interesting that, I don't want to say interesting because it's not. It's odd because right around the time that one of the guys that you had interviewed from the Montauk Project, he passed away. There were two other guys in this field that died at the same time, Carrie Arnold being one of them. And I just thought, they say death comes in threes. Now, you're Italian. So, Latins, we have this weird thing that's kind of like, my friends that it's Italian. He's from New York, and he's always like, death comes in threes. And it did.
I've heard that so much.
Yeah. And so when you've grown up hearing these things, and, it's kind of like, that seemed to like hit home to me when you had posted about the death of that man, who was one of the people that you had interviewed about the Montauk. And folks, I'm not going to sit here and go on and on about the Montauk Project. It's something you have to look at and check out. It's very interesting. Chris, I believe you were kind of at the front of that, the cutting edge. And I'm going to say something else, and I'm not going to say the name of a show, but you had written about this, and then it was turned into a show. Like I said, I'm not going to say the name, but you were the one that was behind a lot of that. Is that correct?
Yeah, for sure. Oh yeah. But it's okay because it was a symbiotic thing in the end. I think I was a little annoyed in the beginning because, clearly I was getting press for Montauk years before they even pitched it to Netflix. And so that's where some people saw, because it had never been interpreted visually before. It's been talked about for years. I mean, it was way back on old Coast to Coast. Al Bielek and Preston Nichols were on that show telling the story. So I don't own the story or anything. But the aesthetics were definitely, I'm not the only person that knows this, like, music, style, a lot of that was taken as some of the aesthetics for the show you're referring to. But at the end of the day, I support that show. I think it's a good show, and they did their own thing. But I wrote a fictional take on with a lot of information though that I heard firsthand from people that I interviewed in the story, called Montauk Boys. And MTV, the president of MTV actually, at that time, optioned the screenplay from me, and they were going to turn it into a television series. And then, once 2020 came, it kind of, all those things fell apart. But I did tell those guys that, I'm going to write it as a novel. I felt like it was being watered down. We were in, and this is all respect to their interest. I still, might work with them one day, but I just felt like everything I was writing was very sharp and edgy, and it was kind of being watered down. And I was like, already this is happening, and we're just in the early stages. So I wanted to forge the story as a novel and make sure that people read my intended tale the way it was meant to be told. And then I can turn it into a movie, or I can turn it into a series or a limited series or whatever. But I just, it means something to me. It's like, I don't know how many years we have here. I could go tomorrow. I could go in 60 years from now. But I just, this stuff means something, So it's like, that's why I care so much about doing it right. And also, it's for other people too. And it's like, I was receiving this stuff all my life. Now I'm making this stuff for other people, and I want to do a good job for everybody. Some people who are making this stuff don't care about delivering to the audience. I really do. Like, I want to give you something. So
Yeah.
so I'm working on whatever that is.
And your current project that you're doing on a week, is it weekly? You're doing Off to the Witch?
Yeah, the podcast. And that Off to the Witch name will be incorporated into a few things. So, like, the new docuseries is Off to the Witch Presents, and then it has its main title, and each of them will be released separately as opposed to just kind of one series that we put out at once. And then, I'm writing, speaking of all of the metaphysical, paranormal, philosophical, spiritual ideas are all rolled into a horror film that I'm writing of the same name as well. And I think that's where I'm using that moniker for a few different things, like the Twilight Zone was ultimately. And so it was radio, it was literature, it was a show, and it was a movie ultimately. So I feel like it could be used for those things. And I'm involved in several other projects right now. I just shot a film in Texas that, again, I didn't write this one, but I connected with the story because it's about this family living on a ranch on the precipice of the apocalypse. And I feel sometimes that's where we are, and we just don't know it. I don't want to believe that, but it's been quite apocalyptic for a couple of years, more so than anyone's experienced. Even our elders. I mean, maybe World War II felt like that, depending on where you were. But I would think. But outside of that, this is a weird feeling, the way the world is right now. So the only way I can kind of purge and express that is to put it into work.
Yeah, one of the guys that works for me, he's Islamic, and one of the things that he said to me the other day, and he's an older guy, and he said that in the Quran, that in the end times, that a year will become like a month, and a month will become like a week, and a week will become like a day, and a day will become like an hour. Wow. And you and I were kind of talking a little bit about how time is just, and one of the things I think is happening, and this is my opinion, I don't know if I told you this, Chris, but I believe that something is going on with CERN. And I think that it's really weird because CERN is also located in Geneva, Switzerland. And there was a saint that was killed there, and supposedly that is where the seat of Satan is where he was killed. And of course, CERN is the god of mischief to some of the Celtic tribes. Some of them believed in Baal, and some of them had CERN. I believe the Gauls in particular got it from the Romans, who it was Saturn or Saturna, and then they said CERN, whatever. But if you look at the Bible, it talks about opening the abyss and releasing Abaddon. There is a lot of weird similarities there. The darkness, like we were talking about Lovecraft, and of course the saying, you stare into the darkness, it stares back. And of course they release Cthulhu, because they bring him up from the depths of whatever. And it's kind of like you get that ominous feeling that that's happening right now. And we are in a period of what I believe is the quickening. And I think it's called that because time is speeding up. And to our perception anyway, time seems to be flying. And yesterday it was Halloween. Now,
Sure.
if you're really you're busy like we are, it seems like time is just, maybe people who didn't go back to work after the pandemic, maybe time's just slow and they're just playing video games and doing whatever it is they're doing. I don't have that luxury, so time just seems to be slipping into the future really quickly for me, and
Yeah,
probably
same.
for you too. Yeah, because there's not enough hours in the day for the industrious people. But I do believe that is a very possible, like what you said, we are on the precipice of the end of an age. Not necessarily the end of the world, but at the end of an age. And I do believe that there are elements that are trying to use this dark energy to create something, I don't know what, but to try to bring forth. And if they are, like they say, they're messing with it, and it's creating the Mandela effect, and it's punching holes in reality. They're trying to create little black holes. Black holes are just the manifestation of the dark matter or the dark energy. And the only reason you would be doing that is if you were trying to conjure up something. And I told you, when we talked the other night about what had happened to me one night, and I've told this on the show, and it's very odd, that I had that encounter that was just very much a one-on-one thing. Like it was just me by myself with this, whatever it was. And I think that is darkness. It's consuming. And I think that so many people are being consumed by it and they don't even realize it. And I think that we can all feel it, but it's like we don't know what it is. We just know that it's there. And I think that is what is the antithesis of God. I don't think Satan, Lucifer, whatever, I don't think that's the opposite of God. I think that is a representation of the darkness, and it is like in the Kabbalah it talks about what these demons are and how they came to be. They are just the adversary. They're not the be-all, end-all of evil. Evil is just evil, and it is darkness, and it is the opposite of the light. And when the goal ultimately, when you pass, I believe, is to get back to the source, to the creation. And that is, I think, the ultimate goal, whereas this darkness is to cut you off and keep you away. Now, Jesus describes hell as being wailing and gnashing of teeth. And, he doesn't always say, "Oh, it's fire and whatever." It's just, like you're cut off from the source and you're basically just in perpetual night, like darkness. And what are your thoughts on that? Now it's a long-winded whatever, but what do you think? What is your take on that?
In general, towards people not being aware that they're being consumed or led to darkness, I think that's very true. It's happened to me. You have to be very careful of what you consume. I would think question anything major that's being put in the forefront of certain entertainment. You just have to be careful. Like again, I'm somebody who believes in freedom of thought and expression. Of course, if you're not hurting anyone in the process, um, it should be fine. But the problem is you could be hurting yourself. And be very careful of what you ingest. I'm in a place in life where I'm aware of what you just said is a strong possibility. So I'm very careful about what I listen to in terms of music, things like that. But then again, it's like a lot, people have misconceptions of things. For instance, take Slayer for a second. That's a pretty intelligently configured, even musically, band. But a lot of people don't know Tom Araya, who sings for the band, is a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more about the fear of exactly what we're talking about, but put into this horrific imagery and sound to represent that. And it's not preaching while it does it either. It's allowing you to figure it all out. It's reflecting. And so I do that in some of my work. I mean, some of the scenes in Montauk is quite horrific. It could have been 10 times more horrific if I were to portray it accurately as to how it really happened. I had to stylize it so it would be palatable for an audience. If I had decided to make it exactly how it was described, nobody would watch. So
Mm-hmm.
and so I have to not water it down, but change it, stylize it. And also, you know, a lot of people appreciated Montauk the way I made it. Some people felt triggered by it. Of course, that wasn't my intention. And then very few people accused me of being part of the, Illuminati. I did that on purpose. I put triggering mechanisms in my movie. Come on, that's not true. I was the sole maker of that movie. Nobody else designed it but me. And I certainly didn't design it to hurt anybody. I wanted to portray, because the original book about Montauk was written as like a science fiction adventure story. No, there were children that were kidnapped, murdered for nefarious purposes. Very well, 100% could most likely is true, and I wanted to portray it that way. So, yeah, and you have to be careful of the depths that you go into things. I mean, I'm somebody at a very young age who was watching horror films, but also learned special effects makeup. So I knew it was fake. Um, and it didn't affect me in a bad way. It almost was comforting to see those movies. A lot of people didn't understand that. It was something, it was an outlet when I was a kid, a very creative thing. And the people that were creating those creatures and all of that were very welcoming people. I actually grew up around one of them. And so I always saw that as a good thing, as a positive thing. Once again, a very spiritual guy, a guy named Jay Wells, special effects makeup artist. He was trained by Dick Smith, who did all the makeup for The Exorcist and The Godfather. And, he made these horrific creature creations. But he was a man of God. He was somebody. It's odd how those people tend to look into those aesthetics. I mean, it's part of the religion I was born into. All of these characters and deities, they open doors for you to see those things for a reason, so you understand. And some of the greatest horror movies have that dynamic to it. There's a balance of good and evil. Sometimes the lines are blurred, and that's in life too. There are people who could be perceived as evil that might have contributed something good to the world at the same time, or were trying, in a way, like genuinely trying to redeem themselves by offering something. So I like the whole spectrum of things because I'm learning as a soul. I think we're on this earth, like Alejandro Jodorowsky said, to build a soul. That's what you're doing
Mm-hmm.
here, you know? And so I truly believe that.
I think
I hope I'm
every
making sense.
time. No, you are. I think that every time we come to this plane of existence, which I think we come more than once, that's my belief, my opinion. But I think that it's all part of the learning, growing process. And some people who've had near-death experiences, they will return and they'll have a full memory of past lives, and they'll remember the entire episode of what happened to them. And then others will come back and they can't tell you much. They can give you some. The ones that have where they've actually died and returned, there's I wouldn't say a large percentage. I would say a small percentage of them will actually tell you that they come back with a second sight. They're able to see onto the other side. They have dreams that come true, which some people can do that anyway. But I think that it's pretty obvious to me that whenever this occurs, there is something that is triggered that happens that connects you to our true state, which is a spirit. And I do believe that the spirit, if you were able to tune in to that, this world falls away. This world, which is more of an illusion, will fall away, and then you will be thrust into the real reality, which is more clear, and it's a more realistic state of being than what we're in right now. And some people, it's hard because once they come back, they don't want to be here. And they're like, yeah, I feel like I'm supposed to be here. This is what God wants me to do, but I don't really want to be here. And I'm looking forward to eventually shedding this body and going on to another form, which is their true form. And I think that they get a peace if it's a pleasant experience and they go to the light. I think they get a peace that they know it's going to be okay when they pass away, because the ultimate fear. Now, I had one woman who had a death experience, and all she found was darkness, complete and utter, total darkness. She was just like floating in a sea of darkness, and it was terrifying. And she was bumping into things and touching things that she could not see what it was. She said if it was like if you were in the ocean and you were in the pitch black and you were surrounded by things that you couldn't see. You knew they were there, but you couldn't see them. And she said it was horrific. And she's actually an author. She was do what?
There has to be a reason for that.
Yeah, well, she's an atheist, and even I don't know now if she's still an atheist, but at that time she was an atheist. I'm assuming to this day she probably is. She's pretty hardcore and not believing in God. 3 of her daughters practice black magic. To this day, they do. And so she, being an atheist and raising her daughters the way that she did, she was like, I just don't know where I went wrong. And I'm like, well, you went wrong by being a completely spiritual atheist and even having had a death experience where you returned and didn't change from that. Still, in that state. And I told her the last time I've lost touch with her years ago, but I told her, I said, it's a really hard thing to accept for me that you actually, died and you did not feel the need to change yourself from what you were. One of the things I always tell people, and this is for the audience, one of my favorite people is Jimmy Johnson. He used to be the coach of the Dallas Cowboys, and he was a psychology major, and he went to college at the University of Arkansas. And I was watching a show called NFL Icons, and I can't remember what channel it's on. I think it's on Amazon or something. And I watched the episode with him, and one of the things that he preaches, and I hadn't heard him say it but one time before that, I think it was his Hall of Fame speech. And I thought, man, I talk about that all the time. And Anthony, you can attest to this. What do I say about a person, about how you treat a person?
If you treat a person according to how they are, they will always stay that way. But if you treat a person according to who you know they can be, as in you see the potential in that person, and you treat them according to that person you know they can be, then they will become that.
Yeah, treat a man like he is, and he will stay the way he is. But if you treat them the way that you know that you treat them as the person that they can be, then you can help change them to who they should be. Some people get really offended because they're like, you expect too much of me. And I'm like, I wouldn't expect that much of you if I didn't see that in you already. And I've coached a lot of guys. I've coached fighters, and I've helped coach football, and I've done all kinds of stuff. Not in high school, but like I've helped. My buddy, he had a peewee team, and I helped coach them. We won 9 out of 10 games. I mean, it wasn't bad. But like I said, I used to teach the kids boxing, teenagers, and I would tell them, that a lot of these kids they had rough upbringing, bad lives, like we did. Chris, you grew up. We talked about this.
Sure.
And these kids, they would always tell me, "Oh, you expect too much." They would complain, and I was like, if I didn't see it in you, then I wouldn't bother. And sometimes you have to let a person go because there is nothing that you can do. You have squeezed every ounce of potential out of that person. They're not going to go anywhere beyond that. It's just going to be, that's who they are. And the rest is up to them. I tell fighters too that I'm a big guy, but I'm quick-handed. I move quickly, and in boxing and in MMA, you have to be quick to be able to be successful. And they'll tell me, well, I want to be fast. And I'll tell them, well, that's impossible. You're either fast or you're not. I can teach you to be faster, but I can't make you fast. You're either born, you're just game bred, or you're not. That's just all there is to it. And
Sure.
I think some people just have it, and some people don't. And not just because you're sitting here on the show with me right now, but I can tell you right now, you have a lot of potential to do a lot more, and I'm sure we can see a lot more. Unfortunately, the way that the paradigm is, I guess the dynamics of the way the system is set up, guys like you and me, and I really believe this, and I'm not tooting my horn and yours, but I'm just being honest, we should be household names. But because
Well,
we're not, the elite, we're not there.
well, I to speak to what you just said, I think, well, the value in that would be that we care enough to bring something better than what's being given. If every point was being fulfilled, then what would be the desire outside of your own personal interest in making something? But it's lacking in it. So that's definitely part of the reason why I'm doing it. I'd like to bring something to the table that isn't there. Now, I've already worked for these studios, and I could have worked for them again easy, but something has changed now where you can. And I don't, household names are starting to be very independent people are becoming household names. I only believe that has value if you're really giving something to the people in the household, like if you're really giving something to them, that changes their world. People, that old saying where you can't change the world. Yes, you can. People do it all the time. And so just have a good reason to do it. Bring something better to the table, because there's the antitheses out there right now it's melting people's brains and spirits. And, I hate to sound like I'm preaching and raining on people's parades, but really there's a lack of something good out there. I want to blow people's minds. I don't want to bore you. I want to bring something out there that's going to blow your mind. So I have to push myself every day to figure out what that is. And I'd like to contribute before I leave this existence, you know, and hopefully I'll be here
Mhm.
for a while. So that's really how I feel.
And I believe in your sincerity too. And I think that with, I would say this. I mean, if you had the backing and the, you know, like, I don't know how to describe it, like the opportunities that I see a lot of these other jackholes get, I'm going like, these people, I mean, you know, why is that guy being given, you know, carte blanche to do and say whatever, and it's just like completely ridiculous. And then I watch you on your docuseries and then Strange World, and I thought, this guy right here needs to be the guy doing it. It's obvious that you have a level of forethought and creativity that most people will never achieve. And some of these people that are just making shows and movies and doing all kinds of stuff, and they don't have enough talent to fill a thimble. And I just
Well,
can't understand, you know.
you know, I'm here making the stuff, and there's people I just got paid to make a movie, so we're doing all right. I mean, 2020 shut us all down, but before COVID hit, I had 2 new shows greenlit, and so they were investing in me. They invested in Strange World. That was a $3 million production. Didn't come out of my pocket, um, you know, but I did run into what you're talking about. And so a lot of things that were being said to me at the beginning of Strange World was literally, and this came out of the mouths of Emmy Award winning co-executives saying, you're the new face of the network. And what I think happened along the way is, and this is why I made the new shows outside of that studio system, is that now you're vulnerable, and don't think that this doesn't happen. You are now vulnerable to somebody who might not want that to happen. And they're going to pull strings, and they're going to throw tantrums, and they're going to cause trouble for you behind the scenes to make sure that doesn't happen. And I can tell you that's exactly what happened. Yet they didn't stop me. There were other networks and other production companies immediately that wanted to make stuff with me. And I'm here making stuff. And so as soon as this stuff is done, I have a solid game plan about getting it out to the world. So everything you said is true, but at the same time, I'm doing the exact thing. I'm going to be pushing this forward with or without giant resources. You know, I'm
Yeah.
making it. I made a better show than Strange World, even though it wasn't full 8 episodes. So far, I've made 2, and they're in post production. That is better than the $3 million show for a fraction of the cost. And the whole idea was to prove myself in that arena. It's like, okay, great. I don't have your resources, but I have mine. Watch what I can do, you know? And that's where I'm at. It takes a little time. It takes time in their circles to make things. But that's where I am right now. And I have a multitude of things coming forward. And I'm happy to be, it brings me a great joy to be in control of these things. And it's not about just being in control. It's about making sure that those things of quality will be delivered in the end to the audience. And that's been a care of mine since I was a kid. I didn't fully understand it as a kid, but I understand it now. I know why I wanted that. So.
Yeah. And I just think that, like, if you were given, like, I don't know how you say it, like the level of attention that some of these other people I've seen, you know, and I'm not going to mention names, but it's a shame, because I think that there's a lot that can be learned. Let's put it that way, from
Well,
people
there's
like you
always
that, you know.
tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm working at it. I don't
Yeah.
know if I want the keys from them, if you know what I mean. Like I
Yeah.
had the keys from them, and it wasn't that pleasant of an experience. That means they have control. The guy you're mentioning, he has to make that stuff over and over again, and that's his legacy. I don't believe he's going to go beyond that. No offense to him at all. He's happy with what he makes. You know, those people are happy with what they make. But I'm not happy making stuff like that. I could have been a good little boy and made stuff like that too, and they would have given me
Exactly.
more. So it's really a practical reason. This is what those networks want right now. Whether they're being willfully ignorant, whether it's conspiracy or not, that's what they want. So it's simple arithmetic. How do you make it outside of that system? Some of the benefits from 2020 made it so that the playing field is level. You just have to have the guts and the wherewithal to figure out how to go and make this stuff without their money. And now you can get it out to the world, and you can get it out to the world in a multitude of ways. Currently, Montauk Chronicles is through an aggregator that pays well if enough people are watching as part of a rev share. I had already made my money back on Montauk Chronicles. It had already gotten out to a lot of people, but now I think it's finding a bigger audience than ever on Tubi. And, the proof is in the stats coming back. So there are people, I think Tubi is available in the United States, Canada, and then Plex is available all around the world. And there are a lot of people watching it right now, and I'm not even advertising it. And I think that's fantastic, and that, again, the situation evolves and changes every day. The more you do, the better it will get, the more opportunities will arise. It's almost like playing chess. You have to figure out the right move. Don't get locked into a 5 to 10 year contract with people who are literally about to make you into the next, destination ghost or ghost plumbers, like, it's like, that's not why I came here.
Yeah. Yeah. And, or like you had said, somebody tells you, hey, you're going to go and look for ghosts in this particular area of whatever. And it's just ridiculous. It seems like a lot of the stuff has gotten stale. And some of the people that are, on top of a lot of they're lazy. I'm not mentioning names, like I said, but I mean, I've heard a lot of podcast hosts and a lot of YouTubers, and they're not good at interviewing. They're lazy. They don't come up with anything new. They don't try to go above and beyond to bring people on to talk. It's just stale, and it's a lot of repetitiveness that goes on in a lot of this. Whenever I tell somebody, okay, for example, that I have a paranormal show, the first thing that they say, like 90% of the time, is like, "Oh, do you go out and look for ghosts?" And I'm like, "No, I don't. I don't. That's not my thing. I don't go into a building and run around shouting and challenging demons to fights. I just don't do that. It's not my thing."
Fight you, demon.
I mean, but it seems like that's what a lot of people's perception of the paranormal was when I started this 3 years ago. And now people are starting to see, hey, a lot of this cryptid stuff and a lot of this UFO and alien abduction stuff, it all is part of it. And somebody told me, well, I'm into Bigfoot and I kind of like the UFO stuff, but I'm not into the paranormal. I'm like, you just named two things that are paranormal. I don't care what anybody says. They are paranormal because it's outside the realm of normality. It's paranormal. It's not normal. It's not normal to go to the store and see Bigfoot standing there, and then to run into an alien, on your way to the local grocery store. That's just not normal. So,
however, some people might claim they do.
Well, they claim they do, and maybe that is their normal. But the whole point is that it is paranormal. And so it is like one of these things that it's just the name paranormal has been connected to ghost and ghost hunting, which you can only take so much as somebody walking around with a little, electronic, whatever, picking up noises and talking to people on a spirit box, and it's the same week in and week out. And then there's these Bigfoot shows where they go around looking, and they're like, "What was that? I heard somebody knock on a tree.
What was that?"
Yeah.
Where they put
Finding
jelly donuts
nothing.
on a log.
Do what?
Where they put jelly donuts on a log.
Oh God! And
They
so
were
you're
waiting
just
for
like,
Private Pile to come.
so you're sitting there going like, there's a million of those shows out there. So when I found your show, I watched it, like I binge watched it real quick. I was just like, dude, this is a breath of fresh air. I mean, you got a guy that goes to these different places, and you talked about things like the God helmet thing. That is really cool what you just talked about. about the God helmet. A lot of people don't know anything about that. They don't know what that is. They have no clue.
Sure, and that's how I'm designing all of my shows. You'll like the new ones are really the epitome of everything I wanted in Strange World. I don't know if you saw the trailer for A Haunting We Will Go, but check it out. It's on my YouTube channel now, and we're putting out a big press release for it in January or February with one of the other trailers for the other episodes. But that's exactly how I pitched the show. And you have to use shorthands sometimes when you're explaining things in a boardroom, as you know. And so the way I tried to tell them was, look, do you remember Anthony Bourdain's last couple of seasons before he left the earth? And they were like, yeah. I said, look, it had a poetry to it. He cared about what he was doing. It was there. It was in everything. Well, what if you saw me in a place like that cares about these arcane subjects in the same way? And I'll discuss local culture too while I do it. It was more about the journey. It was more about taking people with me as opposed to running in a house and saying, oh, the light just went off. Oh, what was that? And it's like, listen, you have 25 shows doing that every week. There is something wrong with management at that network. It's either they want to keep you stupid or they have zero imagination. Either one I have no respect for. So sorry, I don't mean to trash people's shows because that's not what I'm doing. They must know they're just constantly repeating the same thing over and over and over again. Even a baseball game that is basically the same game over and over is infinitely more exciting than watching someone lie to me about a house being haunted, because hauntings exist. We don't really know what they are. Wouldn't it be infinitely more interesting if we went in and started discussing what could be? Let's learn the story here, as opposed to it being so scripted, which they are 100%. So again, like, if people enjoy these shows, please don't. I'm not here to rain on your parade. Enjoy the shows. I enjoyed some of these shows at one point, but I got very discouraged that there wasn't more being offered. That it's the same episode over and over again. So I don't know. I want a little more in this life. That's all.
A friend of mine had a show on a particular network. I don't want to say his name, but we went to eat dinner with him in San Antonio, Anthony and Tony. I know you guys remember this.
Yeah.
And they had staged something for the do one of you guys want to tell it?
Well, like I had asked him a question about I asked him if he could share like a memorable thing that stood out specifically from the different TV shows that he's done. And he said that when he was on this one particular show, they had come across a moose carcass. And the people who were on that show with him, they turned to him and they said, "Hey, so-and-so, well, what do you think of this?" And he goes, "Well, it looks like someone fabricated a moose carcass."
For for us to stumble across.
Yeah.
And so they were like, stop production. And they intervened and basically said, look, you can't say that. And he's like, why not? That's what this is. And they got really upset. And then one of the guys came out and started yelling and saying, that looks real. I made that myself. And he was like, exactly. It looks like a so I told it what it was. And so they had to cut that out. And I'm not going to, like I said, I'm not going to give him away and say the name of the show but it was just interesting that was, that's kind of that's where we're at with this stuff. And there are some very famous top tier named, big time shows on the radio and on TV. And, you get like the same stuff like over and over and over again. And these people aren't asking the pertinent questions that they should be asking. And so that's why I think that there's something that needs to be done to change it, because I do believe that the audience would gain a level of intelligence from being given what their potential to learn could be. I mean, how do you know until you expose them to it? If you think, hey, everybody's stupid, and you play it down to a certain level, then that is what's going to be. And instead of saying, hey, let's try to elevate everybody's level of thinking on this, and let's challenge the audience. And to me, I would rather have a chat room full of people who are deep thinkers and who are able to keep up and follow than a chat room of 1,000,000 people who are just non-playable characters. You
Agreed.
know,
Yeah. And again, they tried to get me to do stuff like that on Strange World during production, and I kept fighting them every single step of the way. And I guess I was a bit of a pain in the ass to them because I refused to bend. And, you hear it all when you're at that level. You're the head of a show that's being financed by a network, and people are encouraging you and saying, oh, you'll get to do anything you want by third season. Just do what they say. And it's like, I'm sorry, I don't know. There's a mechanism in me that won't allow me to sit here and lie about this stuff. I want to, why not? It's infinitely more interesting if we just simply discuss these things, go through the journey. So a lot of Strange World is that. I go to labs, I talk to scientists, try experiments. I met Remote Viewer 1 and went through exercises with him. These are real things. Those were great. The ghost episode, I had an incredible idea for. It was called Deadlands, and it just kind of got whittled away. So maybe that's my least favorite, even though there's some cool things in there. And again, I wasn't the editor. So now on the new series, I'm the editor, I'm the producer, I'm the writer. I photograph a lot of it, even though I'm in a lot of it. I had other people photographing those parts, directed all the recreations, directed each episode. So to be in control of it allows me to make it the way we want. What we're discussing right now, I'm doing my best to get everything in there into the threads of the narrative, making sure it's what I want it to be. Because if it isn't, then I fail, because I had full control. So I have no excuse. I should make something really good now.
yeah, and I wish that there was a way that we, guys like us could create content and compete with the networks. But I mean, obviously, that's just, they're set in stone in a lot
Not
of
only
ways.
can you compete with them, you can beat them. But you have to believe that, Josh. You got to start with that intention. And once that belief is there, then all of a sudden the actual factual doorways and literal connections will start to form. I mean, since I've said, okay, I just did this for a network, now I want to do this on my own. Well, what are your options? Your options are you can get it out to an even playing field on many different streaming platforms now, okay, where it's accessible to the world and you don't need to have somebody take a lion's share of your profits. Another way is to make a licensing deal. And the licenses are with each and every territory. So I've played on Discovery Science Italy. I've played in Discovery Channel UK, Detour Network in Canada, all over the world. So I go to each of them. They're aware of who I am. And I say, I have this new series. Would you like to work out a deal? I mean, it's, there's a little bit more to it, but it can be done and has been done. And so it can happen. You can compete with them. I think the greatest way to compete is quality, not even distribution, quality. You're making a better show than they're making for millions. You completely show them up. It's over, If you connect with your audience, and it starts to connect with more people around the world, and they're talking more about your show than they are about ghost plumbers or ghost architects or whatever they're coming up with next, you're gonna beat that system. And then what's going to happen is, unfortunately, they're going to say, well, I guess we have to imitate these guys. And they're just going to rip you off.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that happened.
Sorry. I was going to say the thing about stupidity is that it's profitable. So of course these network show producers, whatever their position is, would want your content to be watered down and pander to the lowest common denominator, because it's all about profit and not about quality. It's just about the lowest common denominator pumped out at such a high volume, which yields a high profit margin. And it's nothing about getting out information or expanding people's minds or bringing these subjects to the forefront of people's thinking.
And you're right, but one thing for some reason, they're never aware of, and this is proven by them saying, this will never fly. Now, though that phrase has been said throughout cinema and TV history, and every now and then it's said to somebody like Quentin Tarantino, who presents a screenplay called Pulp Fiction, and somebody says, with a lot of money and their nose up, this will never fly. This is a terrible screenplay. Well, we know that's not true. Like The Walking Dead, like Stranger Things, like all of those other shows, this will never fly. All of those things were rejected. And so you just have to stick to your guns, be confident that the audience is going to want this thing. If you're excited about it and you're a consumer, if you're somebody who loves these shows and loves literature and loves all of these things, then it's bound to connect with an audience. You just have to get through the jerk who really doesn't know the audience, doesn't care, only cares about
Gatekeeper.
themselves. Yeah, but I think those gates have been blown wide open. They just don't want you to know. Now, I'm saying this now. I'm somebody who came from the outside. I did not have any connections in the industry, and I went from making a micro budget documentary to making television shows for a network within just a couple of years. So what I'm saying is, now I'm pointing into the outfield again, and I'm saying my new stuff is going to trump, sorry using that phrase, but is going to destroy that stuff. All right. It's gonna cast a shadow. But again, you start with the belief and the faith that you can accomplish these things, and then you have to put that work into application, study, prepare, get ready to do this thing that you said you were going to do. And you go in like Braveheart and you win. That's it.
Yeah.
You have to visualize it first. You have
Yeah.
to see it.
Yeah.
And the word Trump is not necessarily that just talking about the former president. The word before the former president became president meant to, overtake or overcome. It was like, you had a Trump card. That's what that meant. But now it's like
correct. Yeah.
some sort of trigger word or something.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, you're talking about, oh my God, and whatever. But I mean, and the bottom line is too, I come from a different school of thought where I guess, it's just hard for me to see the old guard really fall because, like you said, they're an amorphous thing that and I'm saying this, but like what you said, they'll just steal your idea and then they make it, And the worst thing you could do is go and pitch an idea and then they say, oh, we're not interested. And then next week they have a show about it.
Right. But here's the thing. And here's where they falter. They're a think tank and a committee. I've sat with these people. They're not like us. They don't have that passion. And even if they steal your idea, you have to have the confidence that no matter what, you're going to do it better. You're the one that came up with the idea. You have this infinite galaxy of imagination. They do not. These people are, popping bottles of Adderall. They're drinking nonstop. They don't care. They're doing everything you could think wrong in the book when they're on the road. These are nasty. Some of them are nasty. Some of them are good people. Some of them are really nasty people, and they lost their souls along the way. So they're not going to make something great. They're going to try and hire someone to do it for them. And then they're going to tear that someone apart in the end because they're going to feel inferior and they're going to need to put their word in on the final cut. But like I said, we have something at our fingertips. Number one, we have technology. So the art form isn't monopolized anymore. You have self-publishing. I could tell you many self-publishing success stories, including the gentleman who wrote The Martian. All self-published. It became a phenomena online, but Ridley Scott ended up reading it and wanted to make that into a movie. So I'm just saying, it's completely achievable. You just have to begin, and you have to do some research and really have something good to offer. I think, if you have this opportunity to make something on your own, don't repeat what you're seeing on TV. You don't want to fit in. That's the whole idea. I didn't fit in. Montauk Chronicles was nothing like these shows, and they gave me a series, eventually, within a couple of years of it. I mean, they paid, I don't know, over $1 million to make a sequel for History Channel called The Dark Files, which is a complete and total follow-up on Montauk Chronicles, a full investigation. Fantastic, I mean, I've been making a living in that world since then, and I'm grateful for all those opportunities. I'm not trashing the networks. I'm saying that just like you said before, I believe they're capable of so much more. And so let's do so much more. Let's blow people's minds. They have all these positions. I think the current management is wrong. I think the investors in these networks should fire them and hire people with passion to run these networks, that also have a business sense, of course. So, but this is my truth. Obviously, I'm saying this without fear because I've got nothing to lose. I have everything in my hands. It's all up to me. What are they going to do? Kill me? Because I'm saying these things. So.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say what you're saying right now, it actually is a very good embodiment of something that my Uncle Wolf has always told me or taught me from the time I was a teenager, and he drilled this into my head, is that things are the way they are until they're not. And that's very, very true. And I think that's the same mindset that you have with your work.
Yeah, exactly. And you do have the power to change things. Think about all the independently forged bands, movies that changed the world. I mean, all right. So there was other periods. I was going to say this earlier, that there were other periods throughout television or movie or literary or music history that were bland, that were really stale. Then all of a sudden, something like Easy Rider is made by a couple of dudes who weren't that famous at the time. They had some jobs here and there, Dennis Hopper, but he hasn't taken the world by storm until he made this little movie that was at the right moment, that could be made by us three right now with the equipment I have in this house and a couple of motorcycles. If we wanted to make a movie like that, we could pull it off in a couple of months on our own and change the world. We're at a place right now where we should be making movies like that. Look, I enjoy some superhero movies, but that is not what we need at the moment. What we need are movies and television shows in our world with our interests that speak to people, that connect with people. And again, when I say that, I'm not thinking of anything boring. I want to blow your mind. Some of the Marvel films, they're $1 billion movies. I can't even sit through some of them because
CGI headaches.
Yeah, no matter how expensive they are, it doesn't make a good movie. Some of them are fantastic, by the way. I mean, I loved Nolan's Batman trilogy. I mean, that's a fantastic. And I mean, I guess it's not a superhero movie, but the original RoboCop is an incredible movie. Stuff like that. I love those movies too. But I think right now, because of what's happening in the world, even if you're making a paranormal documentary or related documentary, blow their minds. I have something on Bigfoot I've been writing for years that I'm astonished that no one's gone into the territory that I've written. I mean, it's there for us in archives, but no one's done it. And I'm like, I'm going to do this because you know what? No one's thinking of this. It's amazing. So.
When you and I had the conversation the other night, one of the things we talked about was our generation, Generation X. We grew up playing with G.I. Joes and He-Man and Transformers, and our imaginations took us to places that it seems the subsequent generations and even the generation before us, they just didn't have. Like the generation before us didn't really have action figures. My dad did not play with action figures. And the generation after was the video game generation. And we were at the beginning, the forefront of the video game, whatever. And then by the time we got older, a lot of my friends, though, still play, but they're not as into it as this other generation that came along. And a lot of them didn't really use their imagination as much, and they didn't play with action figures and create the scenarios with the figures and all that we did.
Sure.
And I was like I was telling you, if we just went and looked, and you wouldn't even need the imagination really, if you just went and looked into the archives of some of the stories that I've gotten, and you interview some of these people, you could, like, okay, take for example Tales from the Dark Side.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching that the other day, and I thought, I could do this. I could take 5 or 6 of the stories that I've gotten, and just put them on there and make a show. Like, how hard is that really to do? I mean, and how hard that's why it's just like nobody's doing it. So I guess that's what gives me the perception that it just seems like it's not doable. But then when me and you had this talk
Nobody's
the other,
doing it means you've got a good idea.
yeah, exactly.
That's
And
how I
and
feel.
like when you were talking about the Bigfoot thing, and then you got these werewolf movies where I guess they can't figure out a way to make a werewolf look good, with like, I guess because of the budget or something. But if somebody were to roll the dice and make these creatures look more like the way they actually look, and I'm being honest about how they actually look, because I've covered hundreds of stories about them, that people have given me with firsthand accounts. It's like, why can't you make a movie that has that, instead of these? I don't know what they are. They just look like somebody glued some dog hair to these people's bodies, and they run around
Sure,
growling,
but
and
the thing is, you know how it needs to look, and
Mhm.
that's kind of on a quantum or subatomic level, the universe pushing you to say, "Hey, well, why don't you do that?" That I trust me, I look at a lot of different genres in cinema and even in the world of the paranormal, just like I'm doing with my new shows, and I'm saying there needs to be this. Now I'm filling that void with this. So when the new chapters come out, that is my answer. If I have not accomplished that, then I have failed, and I don't want to fail at this. There's no excuse. Like, the money is not, the me not having 3 million for this new series is not an excuse. I know where most of the money went. It went in the pockets of people who were just absorbing parts of the budget. Um, and obviously a good deal of it were salaries and needed to keep that machine going. But there were people that took salaries, just like in any production, that they don't even do anything, and they don't deserve that money. I think hardworking people should be getting that money, and the only way you're going to be able to do that is to be the person who allots and writes those checks. And so create a smaller group, focus harder on what you need to do, and take a little more time and finesse and care and put it together. And that's what I've been doing. Like, I am constructing this model going forward, and it's already working. Like, everything I'm doing is working. So it's like, it's going to get finished. It's going to get out to the world, and it will. On a business end, it will make a profit. So but I care more so that it's good. Otherwise, I could have just made money doing the other thing.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that you're on to something. I think you're on the verge of something, and I think it could be something that I mean, like, really big. And I tell you right now, folks, I saw it when I watched the Strange World, and I watched the Montauk. It just, when you look at some of the ideas that we were throwing back and forth, man, I'm really excited at the proposition, at the possibility, of working with you in the future, Chris. I think that it would be.
Likewise.
I think it's going to be something we could. I think it's going to be big. I think we could really win. You know what I mean? And we need people who are willing to roll the dice and just say, "Hey, this is the direction that things need to be headed in." I was told the other day by one of my colleagues. She was telling me this. I don't know if this is true, but she said that my show has become a hub for the people in this community. And that a lot of other creators and authors watch my show, and maybe not as many people right at this point, because it's just in my third year. We hit 20,000 or something, I think, on YouTube. We had a lot of other people on the other platforms, but we moved it all to YouTube, and I think a bunch of them are still waiting around for me to drop more on Spotify, which I'm not going to. If I do, I'm going to drop one more episode and just beat the drum. Look, I am not on this platform anymore. I'm only doing this last episode to get you to come onto YouTube to watch me because they're not giving me anything.
I
And
appreciate you giving me a place to speak my mind, Josh.
mhm.
I just want to stress that the things I'm saying are very positive. Even though I'm passionate, it could be misconstrued as me being negative, and I'm not. I'm saying that we love this stuff, and the more it's being diluted, the more it's repetitive, is that we lose something. And again, at the end of the day, you work really hard wherever anybody goes to their job, dealing with family, dealing with life. You want something of quality to absorb. And that's all I'm saying. Like, I'm passionate about making that and pushing myself to do it. And whereas I feel like you said, all these people have all the resources in the world, and they do, and they don't care. So I would say reject what they're giving you and look elsewhere, because that's where the best stuff is going to come from, in my opinion, in the next decade, or through independent circles. You're hearing this conversation right now. We're not procrastinators. I make exactly what I say I'm going to make. Josh is sitting here doing this thing. The audience is building on both of our parts, on everybody involved. So I just, and thank you to anybody that wants to even listen to this or come check out what I'm doing. I appreciate it. I just want to give something good to the audience. That's all. The only reason why I'm doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that it's folks, you got to check out Off to the Witch. It's his podcast. It's really good. He does a good job. Chris has got a great voice too. If all you decided to do was just be a podcaster, you could do that, but you do really good work. And I really think that, doing a docuseries and working together, doing something, I'm excited. I went away from our conversation very excited. Not that I don't feel that way when I talk to, anybody who's a guest on the show or whatever, but like I said, me and you've been going back and forth talking for a while and never actually able to get the time to talk on the phone. And so that was one of my on my bucket list, checking off, to be able to interview you and talk to you. And if you don't know who Chris Garetano is, now you do. And if you're a listener of mine, I would strongly encourage you going and checking out this guy's work. He's got an incredible mind. And he's smart. And I'll tell you another reason why I think he's smart is because the guy that took the mirror out of that house tried to give it to you, and you were like, I don't want that. Thank you very much.
No,
So,
that's what I mean. To be careful about things. Like it's funny. I have movie aesthetics in my house. Like, I have the book. It's a fictional book that was in the Johnny Depp, Roman Polanski film Ninth Gate. Well, that was created by a bookmaker in Italy, and it's not real, because I don't want anything that profound that might carry a bad energy in my home. So I'm
yeah.
very careful about the objects that I keep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been offered a lot of weird things. I could tell you right now, doing some of the deep dive stuff I've done as of late on the Middle East, I'm getting ready to move, and I have a study in my new house. And so I was kind of looking at it today going like, I'm going to put something over here, over there, where I'm going to put stuff. And I think I'm going to be leaving some things behind because I just want to start over fresh with a new energy in the new place. And I don't want some of the objects I've collected over the years. I just think they carry an energy about them. And I just, I've had people try to offer me certain items and things, and I'm just not, I don't want to be like the Warrens and have like this museum of weird stuff that's got things attached to it. And so, yeah, I want to start fresh in a place where I don't have any kind of, and so I'm definitely looking at that as like, I'm going to be shedding some things and letting things go. And when I was doing the deep dive, I was reading some of these texts, and I was going over, and they're in different languages too. And when you start to read them, you're going like, oh, okay, I better stop because that is actually an incantation. Um, and these books do exist. And when people ask me about the names of the books, with the exception of a select few of people, I don't typically want to give them the names of those books because I don't want them having something that they come back to me and say, hey, you know, I opened a portal in my house because of a book that you were talking about on your show. So I tend to keep the names of the books out. Now, there's a lot of other YouTubers out there who you can go to their channel and they'll give you the names of it and everything else. And it does kind of get a little bit Lovecraftian in the way that a lot of this stuff is something that he talked about, but it is not something I would recommend. He presented it in a fictional form, which is really cool the way he did it. And then he doesn't actually give you, like, the Necronomicon is not a real thing. But there are 3 to 4, I guess 4 different books that you could say they were the actual Necronomicon that were the how do you say it, that they were the real books that were the inspiration for that. And so whenever somebody will tell me, hey, have you heard of the Necronomicon? I'm like, yeah, I've heard of it. It's a fictional book, but there are actual books that it's based upon. Then people will ask me, well, give me the names. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that because a couple of those in particular are really nasty. And if you read out of them, you're basically opening doorways to true Lovecraftian horror. I will give you one thing, folks, as the audience, before I close it out here with Chris. The Berkeley Square Horror. If you go and just look that up, I'm not even going to get into what it is. Just look it up and read about it. It happened in England. It is very much a real life Lovecraft type situation. And Lovecraft did base a lot of his work on demons and the jinn and all these different types of whatever. And I think he was onto something in the way that he described Cthulhu as coming from the ocean and being like this cephalopod type entity, because I've often thought of how intelligent they are, and that if you were to design another race of intelligent life, like I do believe, like the Anunnaki, you know, like they would use the cephalopods. I believe that. And so it kind of runs parallel to that. And if you look up the Berkeley Square Horror, it is pretty freaky, and it's considered to be a true story. And now one last thing before you bail, Chris, you said that you grew up not far away from the Amityville Horror House.
Not far at all. Well, when I was in my teen, first of all, I knew it was close to my home when I was a kid. And to a kid, obviously that movie was terrifying, especially with all the ghost stories I grew up with in my home. But as a teen, we would go to the house and again, this is when I didn't know better, bring a Ouija board and sit on the front lawn in the middle of the night of the Amityville house. And we would do that. That was before they put the gate up for security. So yeah, no, I grew up not that far from it.
And that right there, just, you know, to talk about really quick about what we were getting at as far as the energy. To me, when you look at like the Lutzes, okay, and what happened to them, and then the people that were there before, the guy that killed the family, and it was like there was something already there that told him, hey, do this. And I refer to them as the Archons, which are a type of fallen angel. But if you look at it from that, like where we were talking about that Lovecraftian lens, it is actually something further out and deeper than that. It is from that black abyss of that friend of mine that had the near-death experience, of being out there in the darkness and something that comes from the darkness. And there is a misconception. I'm going to jump off here for just a second and come right back onto the boat. But there is a such thing as dying the second death. People have this misconception that if you die in the flesh, your spirit will live on. No, you're promised eternal life by accepting Christ, and you're promised according to the Gospels. Okay, whether people believe it or not, that's up to them. But you're promised eternal life by being the closeness to God. Whereas I've had it described to me as a type of hell anyway, where it's a slow decay of the soul until you no longer exist. Don't know if that's true. That could be a level of it. Others say it's a fiery pit of unpleasantness. Other people say it's the coldness and the darkness of not being close to God. But one thing is for sure is that it's not a good thing. But these beings, they come from that utter black darkness. And when you start to look at these beings, they seem to be more that come from that outer regions. They seem to be more than what we think of as just demons. They don't really have, they're not like a one singular personality. Think of it as a colony that is like a hive that's like it's a million of them speaking with one voice, like a Portuguese man of war type creature. And that, I believe, is what Cthulhu really was the manifestation of the darkness. I don't think they really understood or had a concept of dark matter at the time when he wrote those books, but I think that he was onto something. And I don't think that you would be able to create anything that hasn't already been, doesn't already exist in our world. You know, and then people stumble upon something and they're like, oh, I discovered fire. Well, it says in the Bible that there's nothing new under the sun. Everything has already been done, and it'll be done again. And it just keeps going on and on and on. It's the wheel. It just keeps going. And I do believe that what was going on, like in the Amityville house, was a type of darkness that goes beyond anything we could comprehend. And I don't mean just in that one situation, but like I think it lies dormant, and it reacts, and that it's parasitic, and it latches onto people, and it can take over people. A lot of times when killers, they'll discuss their deeds, they'll be like, it's like something was controlling me, telling me to do this. And I really think that's the case. These archons do that. But that just gets really deep, and it goes kind of way out there. But I would like to, like I said, work with you, and at some point, and maybe we can work on a project that will blow people's minds and make them think. Because I think that that's the ingredient that's missing in this field that's kind of stale, is that bam, you know, this is something new. This is something different. You know, these are people that actually give a crap about, you know, what we're doing. You know, we care, you know, and I do feel that in you, and I see a kindred spirit in you. So Chris, I appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you for talking and giving us a fresh take. Folks, check out his podcast. Also, go and check out his series, Strange World. And don't forget to check out his channel. And anything you got going on, keep me posted, and hopefully we can work together. And, we can bring something, you know, fresh and new, and hopefully, or
no doubt we will. I know we will. I'm working on it. You're working on it. It just takes us to come together if we're going to collaborate on something to figure out what that's going to be and make it happen. I have the means to at least make it into a documentary form, or and so we can make it happen, man. We'll get together, and let's just, like I said, if we don't pull it off in terms of making what we say we're going to make, then we fail. So let's make sure what this is going to be and why. And that's how I've been approaching every new project. It's like I have no interest in making anything if it can't reach the audience in the ways we're describing.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And I want to ask you one last question. You don't play with Ouija boards anymore, right?
Oh, absolutely not. No. And
I
again,
like
anything
what you
I have in
said.
this home is out of it's aesthetics, it's interest. It's like it's artwork. It's Renaissance paintings. It's mythological items, arcane items, things like that. But I'm in a secure place spiritually. That's why I can have these things in my home. They have no effect on me whatsoever because my connection to, however you want to describe it, the universe, God, um, the deeper spiritual meaning is very strong. And I know who I am. And I know who I'm not. And I'm certainly not somebody who would dabble in things that I have no business in dabbling. So no, I don't.
It's funny what you said the other night, and then tell my audience that it was you. You said it was almost like a conspiracy that they put these as toys in every toy store and every store in the
Think about
country to buy them.
I was thinking of having that discussion as one of the it's starting with, if you remember Haley from Strange World, she was on the show with me here and there.
Mhm.
She has a great story. I wanted her to tell it on Strange World, but my co-producers are like, no. But she dabbled with a Ouija board when she was a kid, and there was an entity that came through, specific name, that was talking to her for years. So I'm hoping we get to talk about this maybe tomorrow or the next day, and I can have her on next week on the show where she tells this story. But I'm going to bring up the idea that, and again, I can't say this for sure, but if you think about it, what was it, Parker Brothers or something like that, made the Ouija board. It was in every Toys R Us in the United States and beyond, all over the world. And it still is. It's still available in that magnitude and that abundance. And and every kid that opens it up is now opening up a portal to places unknown. So it's such an interesting discussion.
Yeah. And hopefully we can have the discussion like that again sometime. I'd be more than happy to come on your show, talk about Dogman and my experiences or whatever you need. Just like to work together again in the future, and hopefully we will. And folks, Chris Garetano, it's the night after Thanksgiving. And how was your Thanksgiving, Chris? Was it good?
It was good. I got to spend it with family, and I told them maybe, and again, I'm not raining on the parade, but I feel like sometimes these nights should be a little more intimate. We had a lot of people there, and it was like, hey, let's reduce it down a little bit so we can absorb the good energy of the night. Sometimes more people in the room kind of distracts from what the meaning is of it all. And again, we have these holidays for a reason. You may have many, many more left, hopefully, or it could be your last or last with some family members. And I just feel like those things are sacred to me, like those moments. Every moment is, right? And so holidays mean something to me, and it should be spent with family. But at the same time, I think let's find the deeper meaning to it. That's my interest, at least. I don't know. That's how I'm living life now.
That's a good way to do it. It's a good way to look at it.
Sure.
Well, Chris, keep doing what you're doing, and thank you for coming on the show, and I appreciate the conversation. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed our talk the other night, and I enjoyed our discussion tonight, and I hope that we didn't get too far out there, but yeah, I appreciate it, and we'll be in touch.
Likewise, man. No, it was a great conversation. I hope everybody enjoyed it, and anyone has any questions for me, I'm sure you can find me.
Yeah. Off to the Witch is his podcast. Go check it out. What platforms are you on?
It's currently on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Radio Public, a few others. So it's out there. I don't there's commercials, trailers I make, the creative ones I put on my YouTube channel. But on my YouTube channel, you can see the trailer for A Haunting We Will Go, and an early little teaser I put out for Halloween. So, and Montauk Chronicles can be found in the States on Tubi and Plex, just about everywhere else. It's on Apple and Amazon, but you have to pay for it there. It's free on Plex and Tubi.
And folks, if you haven't checked out the Montauk Chronicles, I strongly suggest you do. Really cool. So, all right, guy. I'll see you, Chris. Thanks for being on. You have a good
Thank
night.
you. You as well. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Bye. So, folks, that was Chris Garitano. And, yeah, one of the things that he said, like in the conversation, it I guess, just for me, it just seems like, things are like Anthony, you said, I always say that things are the way they are until they're not. There was a situation when I was a young guy that I always refer to, and there was an established order to the way things were downtown here in Austin when I showed up. And people were telling me, this is the way it is, and you're not going to change it. And I smashed it, and I did change it. And I had done some things by the time I was in my mid-20s that most people would never accomplish in their entire life. And I'm not going to get into what those things are, because those are not things that I care to discuss anymore. It's not who I am now. It's not what I am. But they said, oh, no, this guy he's the established guy that does this and that. And who are you? You're some upstart.
But you did the same thing with this show.
Yeah, and
the
in the security
community.
field, everybody was like, you're not going to take these big contracts from these bigger companies. They did this, they did that, And I always used to lament that I didn't have the financial backing to play ball and go head-to-head with these bigger competitors, and I had to always build from the ground up. So I think that, it was kind of like, where Chris said, no, it is, you can do this. I guess what I was trying to say was, like, it just seems insurmountable at times, because you have to start over and build your war chest, and then you have to go to war with these people, and you have to take on the establishment, and you have to fight and put your horns on and go after them. And it just gets old, it gets tiring, and I've done it in different realms and different fields over and over again. Whether I was doing what I was doing back as a young man, which thank God I've been delivered, I don't do those things anymore, and going to war with these bad people who people thought, oh, there's no way you're going to, they outnumber you 10-1, and they're this and they're that, and, they gave us all their credentials of how many people they've done this to and that to, and I'm like, I used to always say, I'm not them. I'm not this other punk that you did all this stuff with and beat up and whatever, you took everything from them. That's not me. And, the same thing goes, when I started doing the security, they're like, oh, yeah, you're not going to compete with these blah, 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 blah. Why not? Things are the way they are until they're not. I always say that. And then I always tell people I was very good at spotting people that could do certain things. Now, I got this. I'm going to post this to Facebook too. One of my friends posted this. I'm going to read this real quick. It says here, great leaders are not the best at everything. They find people who are the best at different things, and they get them all on the same team. Leadership first. That is in a nutshell, that's what leaders do. They find a unit, like I tell my guys, we're a unit. We function as one, as a hive mind, as a wolf pack. And not just mean like wolf pack because my nickname is, well, I'm talking about that's what you have to do. Killer whales are the most successful hunters in the ocean and probably on Earth. They are literally the apex predator on the planet. They don't do it alone. A couple of them are capable of wiping out entire schools of great whites, and they did it off the coast of Africa. Two, which they believe they were brothers, to Orca, which was a stronghold for hundreds of years for the great white off of the coast of South Africa. They actually literally changed the entire ecosystem. Two of them, two killer whales working together, got rid of them. Now they had this documentary, and these South Africans were like, oh, we can't even go out into the ocean and have a bunch of great whites swimming around like they want. I guess they wanted them there for the tourism or whatever. And they were mad because these 2 killer whales destroyed that. The whole industry is just gone because 2 killer whales decided that they wanted to live there, and they just killed off all the great whites, and the ones that didn't get killed ran off. But it was a stronghold for them for a long time, and now it's not. So you're looking at a change that was affected in just a few years. So it is really just things are the way they are until they're not. You, the paratroopers, my people, my base, you are a big part of that and helping change what is becoming and has become a stale environment. I'm not happy in living in any sort of, well, I mean, of course, a caustic environment, but I would just say just being in an environment that is stagnant, whatever. It doesn't matter. You have 100 podcasts a day starting up. People telling me, I'm starting a podcast. Great. You and 100 other people. But it's a lot of work. Am I right, Anthony, Alec, Tony? This is not easy.
No.
Oh yeah, people have no idea.
They have no idea how much work goes into this. And I applaud you for trying to do this. But like my friend David Weatherly said, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Not everybody's going to be an artist. Not everybody's going to be an author. Not everybody's going to be able to perform as a podcaster.
Everybody has a voice, but not everybody should use it.
Yeah, exactly. And my little nephew came today, and he's actually my niece's boy. So he's like, I guess I'd be his
Granduncle?
great uncle, whatever.
Yeah.
But when you look at him, he says, Uncle Wolf, I want to be a podcaster. They left the studio an hour ago, but he said that I want to be a paranormal. He's a real paranormal enthusiast, right?
Yeah.
And I said, okay, so we'll take you to you don't have no school. On Friday, I said, we're going to do the show on Friday. Well, why don't you come, mijo? We call him mijo, it's in Spanish. I said, why don't you come to Uncle Wolf's studio, and me and your Uncle Anthony we'll show you, And so he comes, and he's like, and then he's sitting over and he's getting tired, he's getting bored. And I was like, I wanted to tell him, and I'll tell him the next time I see him, I was like, that is the other side of it. It's not all fun and games and yelling at ghosts or whatever it is. You have to do the work. And guys, how many hours do you think, just on your opinion, do I spend reading other people's encounters? I mean, how many hours you would estimate?
Like on in what time?
In a weekly
time
basis.
Mm,
I mean, it's about as many hours as I spend on site. Somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
I mean, I would imagine that anytime you have some free time to look at your phone, it would be to either go through some emails and read some stories, give yourself some, what is it called? Some time to be able to just thin down the massive horde of emails that you would get.
Mm-hmm. And, when we started this, it all just started with a dream of like, let's make a show, and Armando, he was like pushing me, and he says, dude, you have all these, because I showed him my journals, and I said, check these out, man. These are stories that I've collected over the years. And Armando we went to Taylor on a couple of occasions, and he was able to talk to some of the people, and he was just like, dude, this is crazy. Like I know Tony, you and Anthony were involved in a lot of that in the early going. We interviewed people. We went to dinner with people, and we sat down and we talked to so many different people who had different stories. And I said, dude, we have to get these stories out. And when we sat there after I think the second or third episode, we kind of had a meeting, and we were like, and it was Armando. I remember Armando asking, he was like, are we in danger of running out of material? And what did I say emphatically? No. I said, we will never. I said, what's going to happen is eventually, every time we drop an episode, we're going to get 3 or 4 stories about that subject. And is that not what has happened?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what
But
happens every time.
That's what happened.
it's also different because we didn't limit ourselves. We didn't box ourselves into one specific category of, you know, physical dogman or the rake, or just like we didn't make it so that we had no choice but to wait on our audience to give us the stories, because now by having such a wide array of uh, topics to talk about, meaning that if we don't get a story about something else, doesn't matter. We can just wait and talk about this other things, and bring light onto some of the other paranormal topics that may get, overlooked because of these more bigger and more appealing and more enticing topics that you can overshadow some of these smaller uh, topics that are very still happening to people and are still, and traumatizing people, but aren't really getting dealt with as much.
Mm-hmm. And I think that being that we, we did decide to cover a wide range of topics, and I think that's a big one, because we could have easily just said, hey, let's box ourselves in, let's just talk about Dogman, and there have been others that have done that. But you're going up against a couple of heavy hitters that they've gotten that's their niche, and you're going to take some of that, but you're not gonna
compete.
Yeah, you're not gonna compete. And besides that, I didn't want to just do Dogman or just Bigfoot or whatever. I wanted to talk about all of it, and I always knew, even without all of the evidence, the mountain of evidence that we've gotten as of late, of what, I always knew it was all connected. And now I know 100% that it's all connected, and there's no doubting it. I mean, it is what it is. So, yeah.
I mean, that's why the naming was very important for us too. I mean, we spent a long time thinking. I mean, not a huge amount of time, but we spent a good amount of time thinking about some different names, and that could represent what our views, and also what we kind of thought was important about.
Yeah,
Well,
I remember we
basically,
sat around doing a bunch of brainstorming about
yeah,
it.
I mean, it was. I think it was a kind of what our name was gonna be was gonna represent us and what we talked about and what we kind of wanted to be in our approach of the paranormal. And I thought that's why having a name like Paranormal Roundtable, where it's kind of we're all in this together, we're in a discussion, it's a group, it's a community, it's a round table to where you can't be in it by yourself and fill the table. It has to be something where it's a bunch of things together. It's a bunch of people working together and sitting around and discussing it. And that's why I love I like the name so much. And also that's why I liked the direction that we've been in. Been able to, like you said earlier tonight, be the hotspot kind of like other podcasters or other big figures in the community. Like earlier, I saw Barton was in the chat, and people like that. You'll see Dark Waters come in, say hi sometimes. Vault.
Mm-hmm.
It's real cool to be and see that.
Yeah, sometimes Ken is here to heckle me. Yeah, and you get other guys, big name people. I know Steve Stockton and me had talked one day, and he said he'd been watching my show for a couple of years before we started actually communicating. And
Tina, I mean,
yeah, I mean, it's I appreciate it that people like my work, like Josh and different people. I've collaborated with a lot of different people in this field, and I've been blessed, and I'm honored that people actually look at my material and say, hey, this guy's got something going on, because that is what is the biggest nod to, hey, you're on the right track, is that your peers are looking at you as at the forefront of something But I love my audience, and I tell people all the time, I said, my fans travel. If I go to another podcast or another show, and I talk on that show, you guys show up. You know, they'll get 1,000, 2,000 views of right after. They've already gotten a couple thousand, and it's a testament to the loyalty of our fan base. But I try to put out a good product. I try to put out something that's fresh and new. And I do spend hours poring over stories because I want the good stories out there to come out. I want you guys to hear the not the same old stale, like I was driving down the road, saw a Bigfoot on the side of the road. Like, I got 1,000 of those, dude. And no offense to people who've seen Bigfoot in that way. But like, you have to have, and it's up to me to follow up on these and to dig deeper and get and pull out the information and then relay it to you correctly. And that's what I hope to do with the books that I'm writing. I'm writing one and then trying to get another one started. 2 different books, 2 different subjects, but it all ties in together. And hopefully one will come out because I work on one, then I work on the other, and I'm trying to get it done. And it just, there's going to be stuff in there that's not available. And because some people, they just want to read, and that's fine. And so that'll bring them to the Paranormal Roundtable brand, and they'll come around. And I want to bring somebody on for you guys and tell you, hey, this guy's got a show and it's really good. Go check it out. Doesn't hurt me. Doesn't take away from me. Somebody told me the other day, you're stupid. They said, this guy really did this. He insulted me. He messaged me. He said, you're an idiot. He's like, you're always promoting other people's work, and eventually nobody's going to watch you because you suck. He said, the only good thing you do is that, but it's a stupid thing to do. And I said, why? There's not enough time in the week to watch somebody's, 45-minute long podcast. It's like, and that person in the end is an idiot, and he's one of the trolls that watch it and do and everything I do, and then they go and they critique me, and like we've told them before, Tony, like, you're just paying us, dude. You're watching our show so you can talk trash. That takes energy and time away from you.
Yeah, it's like you're literally talking trash to us. The only thing we're thinking is
you're giving us views.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it so much.
Mm-hmm.
We have never found a more inspiring fan than you.
Mm-hmm. You keep me coming back and doing this, and then on top of it, you're giving us views, and so we appreciate it.
To be honest, I mean, I don't want to say like nothing to our obviously loyal PRT fans, but it was these fans, the haters, that really made you come back. When you were gonna give it up for a little bit.
Yeah, because I was like, I'm not. They were all jumping for joy already.
Yeah, and then it was all like, oh well, fine then, I'll stay. I mean, so like, that's why we need those guys. Yeah, to keep the hate keeps me warm.
Mm-hmm. So, folks, for everybody here at PRT, the night after Thanksgiving, our first Friday. The first of many Fridays, we're going to be here on Friday night because y'all can stick around on Friday night. We can do it, and you don't have to worry about having to get up to work the next day. A lot of people were saying they could never finish the show; they had to finish it later. I think it was a success. I think that we did a second show here. We told some stories, and then we got Chris on, and Chris is an amazing guy. You got to check him out. I'm hoping to work with him in the future. He's one of many people that I want to work with and that I plan to work with, and I try to get things done. Let me get moved. Let me get moved into this house and see where I'm at. And, let's see what the world, the universe, God, man, nature, whatever, in particular God, let's see what they have in store, for me. And it all hinges on my time, and what I can do. And hopefully, God willing, I'll be able to start doing this more. Because I'd like to make it a 2 episodes a week. Maybe one hour-long recorded episode, and then one 3-hour live stream. And if you people who are here right now, you already know this, that the live stream gives you a ton of content. It gives you 3 hours, whereas the other episodes are just an hour long. And the people that are just fixated on that, you know, and listening to it on the podcast, they're like, oh man, you know, I just want to know why you guys quit doing it. I didn't quit. We're just on YouTube. So if we could get all those people from those other platforms to come and be here, we'd get a lot more likes, a lot more subscribers, and a lot more listeners, a lot more views, and we could just keep growing. And then the more that happens, the more I can focus on this. Imagine what we could do, how many more stories I could put out there for people and of the people who give me stories, and how many more I could tell, and how many more people I could put on the show, and how many more episodes I could do, and how much more information we could put out there. If only we had more time, and I can't do that unless we grow, because it does take away from my business. So anyways, something to think about for the future. And I still like what I do, you know, at my profession, but I would like to be able to do this more, you know. But right now, it is the way it is. But so everybody here at Paranormal Roundtable, I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. And I want to say a shout out to, who was it today that helped us? Steve and... what was his name?
Can't remember the other guy's name.
Jacob. Steve and Jacob. We bought beds from them today. Mattresses, really awesome. I think it's going to be really nice because we're moving, and so we upgraded our bed, and we're happy. We're moving into a big house. It's going to be nice, roomy. I have a new study. I have one here at the studio too, but I don't like having to drive all the way over here just to get in, and I have to sit up here in this haunted studio that's been haunted since we did one particular episode. I'm not going to talk about that, but anyway, we have a house that we're going to have, and it's going to be nice, and I'm looking forward to it. So we'll see you. All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope everybody, like I said, had a great Thanksgiving. Everybody's traveling. Be safe. And we love you, and good night.
Good night.